everybody for attending. We'll do a moment of silence, and Mr. Irvin's going to lead us in a pledge. Everybody, please stand. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we do consideration of the consent agenda, I want to move the Athletics, Facilities, and Director, or Finance Committee down to action item section 5. And I guess we need a motion for consideration of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Or, Mr. Chairman, where's the director's report?
It's Director's Report's under section 4.
Second on that.
Okay. And roll call vote?
That's up to you.
No, we don't need roll call. Okay, so you all right, Mr. Irvin?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all we need, so,
Voice vote.
What you do for that?
You're gonna have a voice vote.
you gonna, okay.
Voice vote.
Yeah.
Let's just do a roll call, be cleaner. Go ahead.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
And this is changing the consent agenda, correct?
Yeah, we're moving the athletics, facilities, and finance down under, they was in the consideration, the consent agenda. We're moving them back to action items on the agenda.
That's fine, yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. And then we need a motion to consider the meeting agenda.
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, please. And add policy 6.316, 6.3161, and Boones Creek Middle surplus to the agenda. And on that 6.3161, I'd like to move it probably first thing, since we have our board attorney on here. It's to discuss that. There were a couple that wanted to discuss that policy, and Mr. Bennett's here tonight to let us ask some questions on that, give us clarity.
All right, let's do the surplus after the policy's in.
That'd be fine.
Is that fine?
And that 6.316 policy, we'll leave it in that policy towards the, put it at the tail end of it. But that one policy will pull the front first. Is that clear, Jim?
Where were you putting those? I'm
The
sorry.
6.316, we'll just put it at the end of policy.
In the policy section?
Yes.
Okay.
And the 6.3161, if we can, we'll do it first thing, since Mr. Bennett's with us.
3161.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You should ask to get the tier 5 votes, you should.
Okay, also, on that, can I vote on all this at one time? With what Mr. Fleener asked,
Yes,
and
you can.
also in that, I'd like to move the 3 ladies that want to speak. I'd like to go ahead and put them at the front. If we can add that in there and let them speak, so they don't have to sit here all night. That's okay. So, can we get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, okay. Roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. All right. So, Ms. Astrop? you
What
wanna
do I
go
know? What do I do?
first? What does she do?
She could use that podium or that mic.
Okay. I'm gonna read this to all three of you all at one time, is that okay?
Yeah.
The individual speaking to the board shall address remarks to the chairman and may direct questions to the individual board members or staff members only upon approval of the chairman. Each person speaking shall state his or her name, address, subject of presentation. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority voted board. Chairman shall have the authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who does not adhere to the above rules or chooses to be abusive to an individual board member or the board as a whole. Members of the board and the director of schools may have the privilege of asking questions of any person to address the board. And I would personally ask that we don't abuse any names of any staff, please.
This ain't working. Hello. Sorry, y'all can hear me, so. This isn't working. But I mean, I'll talk loud, so I think we're good. I'm Carrie Astrop, 21 Mockingbird Court, Jonesboro, Tennessee. The reason I wanted to speak to you guys, I know y'all received several emails from me. Thank y'all for the ones who responded back. This year has been trying for everyone, including myself with my career and my husband's career, including being a working parent of 2 children that are, basically now virtual learning. I want to start off by saying Jonesboro Elementary is kicking butt and taking names. If y'all could do 3 days and let those teachers teach everyone else how to do it, I mean, it's like my son has not skipped a beat. Okay, it is going amazing. Y'all would quit getting hate mail from me if I could get my middle schooler at the same level my elementary schooler is getting. I'm probably pulling Logan from the middle school. If something changes between now and Monday, as soon as we get all of our assignments done, I'm probably pulling him to homeschool him until you all decide if we ever get to come back to school. Our experience has been terrible. I'm not going to use any names. I have met with Cindy Hayes. She knows, we did talk. She knows my issues, so y'all can confirm with her. But we are getting no education. So we're going from March till now. My son gets nothing. Okay, we all got COVID and we all had the flu at the same time. And 2 weeks, my son didn't log in. I called both schools, explained to them, hey, we're going to get called up, but I have a sick child, I'm sick. Okay, everything is fine. I all of a sudden get a nastygram from a teacher that tells me that you have the 7-day policy, you're going to get zeros. And I call the principal works it out, no big deal. But the issue is when you have a sick child and you have 57 assignments to complete, we are so behind, you can't even try to catch up. And there are teachers, because I called around, and there are teachers who do exempt assignments to help kids that are sick to get caught up. I'm not one of those lucky people. For my middle schooler, we are down to 17 assignments, and once those 17 assignments are done, I'm walking away. I've asked for help from everyone for my son to get an education in the school system for virtual. I know it's hard and I know it's difficult, but it is not fair for a straight A 6th grade student to get 0 education. Okay, I cry because I'm passionate about it, but his education matters. I see y'all on every meeting, I watch it, and I know y'all know I'm watching the meetings because I don't miss a meeting, and I hear everybody arguing over teacher safety. Teachers don't want to be back in the classroom, but I also hear the amount of teachers who want to be back in that classroom and they don't have a voice either. Okay, I've not heard anyone figure out a way to say, hey, how can we safely do this? Other school systems, they eat lunch in the classroom. Other school systems put up plexiglass. Other school systems put the temperature monitors up as you walk in the school. Yes, are they effective? We don't know. But we have put not that many safety measures that we could do to help get these kids back in school safely. I know everybody's goal is to get them back in school safely, but we're looking at this pandemic lasting for another year. Okay, this isn't going away anytime soon. And we have yet to figure out a way to get these kids in that classroom. You're killing the teachers who are busting it. I feel so bad for them, okay? They are drained, they are tired. We go to virtual, we go to hybrid, we're back out. Hybrid is terrible for all of us. I just want to say that. It's a nightmare, okay? We either need to be in or we need to be out because your teachers cannot do both. okay? And I'm taking up for them on that. And you have teachers who will message us, especially when we're trying to catch up on assignments. They'll email me at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. I had one teacher say, Carrie, take a break from schoolwork. Like, I was driving them crazy because we're trying to get caught up. You have some amazing teachers in this school system, and I feel like no one on this board and no one is taking up for those school teachers that are really busting it. And I want to say thank you for that. But I also don't want to paint a pretty picture that we're all getting that same experience. And when we are upset and teachers aren't doing their job, I don't know who to go to fix it. I've exhausted all options. And some of us are not getting that amazing experience. Then to see on Facebook, I am so tired of reading teachers put parents down and staff down here at this school, because if I didn't want to go to work, my CEO made us come back. I mean, we were virtual, then they're like, you're coming back to work. If I put my employer down, like I see some of these teachers do on Facebook, I would be fired tomorrow, okay? They signed up to be a teacher, and I appreciate them, but if they don't want to be here, then I'm sorry. But this is our new normal. This is our new normal. And my kid's education is suffering from our new normal. So if y'all can help me figure out a way to get him an education, I'll keep him, but if not, I'm gonna pull him. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Jason, I
Yes.
got a question.
Ms. Ashcroft?
Oh, yeah.
Question, what was you told when you asked about when he was sick?
Well, I contacted when he got sick. I mean, I didn't send my kids to school or anything like that. They never got to come back full-time because we got sick. So I called as soon as he had a fever, because, you know, we were given guidelines as parents to follow. So I called, everything was okay. The principal assured me that the 7-day policy didn't count, that I had plenty of time to get the work in. The problem is we're working against midterms. So if he doesn't have these grades in and done by midterms, he gets zeros, which means he will have straight Fs for this semester because he got sick. But we're down to 17 assignments left to do, and that's it.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
what was the time frame that he missed?
He was out for 14 days total, or school days, 10 days total. But he was sick. Now my other one was not sick. He did not have symptoms. He was COVID positive, but he was not sick, and he didn't miss any assignments. But the teachers were gracious because they knew we were all sick, so they did exempt some assignments because, I mean, you have 2 kids, you're trying to catch up on 2 weeks of work. And one thing that I don't think anyone's thought of is, you know, you have your elementary teachers that, you know, virtual was pulled, so they only have in-person students. So when mine had to be pulled virtual, you know, they're doing that extra work to give my son assignments. And I mean, it's an abundant amount of work. I mean, we made it work, and my youngest one hasn't, I mean, he has.
So all this took place when we was in person?
Yes, we were not in person, y'all were in person. Yes.
So they didn't quarantine your youngest, the one at the elementary?
He was quarantined, he never got
Not
to
him,
school.
I mean the rest of the class was not.
No, because we never came to school.
Oh, you did, oh, I see.
No, we never
Okay,
came to school.
Thanks, I understand.
We've not got that option yet.
Okay,
Maybe one day, I don't know.
okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes.
May I use the podium?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know if this is working. Hello? No? I'll just speak loud. My name is Ashley Barnes, and I live in the Sulphur Springs area. I am an alumnus of Daniel Boone High School, a ER nurse, and most importantly, a mother to a 2nd grader and upcoming kindergartner at Ridgeview Elementary School. I appreciate the opportunity to voice my concerns this evening with you all. I have many issues with virtual learning. For one, my son has been kicked out of his Google Meets multiple times since last Thursday. Thankfully, we've only had minor hiccups until then, but it is now becoming the new normal. My son gets very frustrated to the point that he does not want to log back in just to get kicked out again. My son also has a hard time staying focused during the virtual meetings and at home, or during at home. I constantly have to remind him to focus when I'm not working and I'm able to actually be there with him. While he is learning to read and write, he is also having to learn how to work a computer and to type. I don't know about you, but a computer is hard for me enough as an adult, and I'm still trying to learn how to navigate the Google stuff. We spend more days crying together than we do not. My point is, this is adding extra stress to these kids while they are trying to learn the basics. I could go on and on about our experiences and other stories that I have heard about why the virtual isn't working, but I wanted to remind us of other reasons why virtual is not the answer. As I have experienced this new way of learning with my child, I can't help but reflect on my own childhood experiences. I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Baldridge, and our circle time where she read us fun stories and taught us how to read. I loved my third grade teacher, Miss Haga. For some reason, I vividly remember learning how to tell time in her class. I also remember her teaching us how to write in cursive. My fourth grade teacher, Miss Riddle, let us play this really fun game with a chalkboard eraser after we all got our work done. She made class a lot of fun. I had a pretty amazing fifth grade science teacher that had Madagascar hissing cockroaches in his room. I know that sounds gross, but we loved watching them and playing with them. Mr. Edmonds made science really fun, and he brought it to life. We did many experiments like make rockets, learned about gravity by dropping eggs out of his classroom at Boones Creek Middle School. We collected leaves and made posters to learn about our trees and the process of chlorophyll. Many of us attended a camp called Cedar Creek where we explored caves, learned about local bats, wildlife, and a lot more. We had a club called Tennessee Students Against Pollution, where we learned how to take care of our planet, went on hikes through our beautiful mountains, and went to local water treatment plants and landfills to learn how we all affect our planet. I could go on and on about those amazing experiences. I also had an amazing art teacher, Miss Bingham, who brought out the artist in me that I didn't know existed. With her teaching and encouragement, I came in third place in a state art competition. Because of her, I still paint and draw in my spare time. I will also never forget our storytelling club and the time we hosted a huge storytelling event with kids from all over our area. Miss Kinsler, who taught at Daniel Boone at the time, she's the one that guided me to my passion for nursing. I joined the HOSA club and continue to take her classes throughout my high school career. These are the experiences our children are missing with virtual learning, and these are the experiences that shape our children's lives. I understand the fear that has been created with an unknown virus, but we cannot continue to run from it. This virus is here, and we are not going to get rid of it. We have to teach these kids to show up when life throws us unexpected challenges like COVID. We are failing our children by teaching them to run and hide. I guarantee you are still grocery shopping, putting your checks in the bank, call a plumber if you need to, eat out or take out, or have you ever thought about finally doing that remodel you've been wanting to always do? All of these jobs are important, and they start with learning in the classroom. As an ER nurse, I have taken care of many COVID patients, and I made an oath to the public to be there and care for you no matter what. If I'm afraid to show up, who will be there to hold your hand when no one else can be there to care for you? Also, as a nurse taking care of COVID patients, our quarantine policy allows us to continue working until we become symptomatic or have a positive COVID test. We wear our mask and we distance ourselves so that if one of us does become positive, we hopefully haven't exposed our coworkers. It seems at Ridgeview, entire classes are being quarantined. If masks and 6 feet work, why are so many quarantined? Our high schoolers are already working as essential workers, as many work in grocery stores, farms, fast food, and trade jobs. How do we train our next line of superheroes if we don't get our kids back in the classroom learning the basics that are so fundamental to life? Our kids have an American right to a free public education. I have not heard our board members speak much about our parents' concerns and struggles with virtual learning. Many of our parents have to work to provide for our children and then are also expected to go home and teach them as well. I know that is part of being a parent, and it is, but I do not have the education and training needed to provide an adequate education for my child. I am not aware of the techniques and ways to teach my child his sounds and better his reading and writing. It also concerns me there are 2,000 kids without Chromebooks, and some have no access to internet. What does virtual look like for these children? Do they have interaction with their teacher, or do they just complete a packet and turn it back in? If so, that is not fair to that child. I am asking you to put yourselves in the shoes for our children for a minute. Some of the younger kids are getting frustrated because of the computers and not knowing how to use them. Some of our kids do not necessarily fear COVID, but where their next meal will come from. Some of our kids only get the support and love they need from our schools and their teachers. Our schools, for some of our children, are their only safe space. Imagine being a child and fearing having to cough, sneeze, or getting too close to your friend, or once again being home all day away from any social interaction. I do not want to see any child virtual, but if we are concerned about the spread of COVID, I propose we get our K through 6th graders back in school. Our younger kids are easier to distance, don't change classes as often, and desperately need in-person interaction with their teachers to learn the fundamental basics such as reading, writing, and math. Again, I don't want to see any child virtual, but our older kids are able to navigate a computer, be responsible for their assignments, and possibly stay home alone if needed, unlike younger kids. I encourage you to think about a plan that involves returning all kids to school after November 30th, or at least our K through 6th graders as a start. Finally, what has been most frustrating for our community and as a parent is the perception that sports are valued more by the majority of our board members than our children's education. That perception comes from allowing football games, soccer, cross-country meets, and other activities to continue on as normal as if they do not spread the virus. This perception, or the perception that our board values $1 more than our kids' education. I am not standing here saying I want sports taken from our kids because I don't. I don't want anything taken from them. But I have a problem with the hypocrisy this board has expressed, stating our kids aren't safe in the classroom, but they are fine to play contact sports, or we can pack out our football stadiums with fans. We are creating the perception that sports are more important. I know for a fact that our parents don't want to take these activities away from our kids, but we can't value sports over education. It is also frustrating that the same board members that feel the classroom isn't safe also allow their family businesses to operate as normal for fall festivities. I think we all know what I'm talking about. I have acquaintances that have visited local businesses for kids' field trips or family fun and stated masks and social distancing were not mandated. And it has also been noted by a board member in an email to a parent that Dollywood and the farm is safer than the classroom. Again, the perception persists that the value of the dollar means more than education.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
it's been about 7 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I hate to interrupt you, but it wouldn't be fair to the,
I understand.
so, has anybody got any
I
questions?
didn't realize I was, sorry, I was trying to be clear.
Thank you. I wanted to know what grade level your son's
2nd grade.
second. What about the situation with the Chromebooks, by the way?
We now have more Chromebooks than we have students.
So we've got enough for
As
everybody.
of 3 days ago, we have enough. for
3 days
everybody.
ago. Okay, good, thank you.
That's
Can I-
in your email, right,
May I add one more thing? I just proposed I'm not against sports, but Boone Ballers, they're not allowed to play as long as we're virtual, or with the Junior Pioneers. And I think if it's safe for our older kids to play, why can't our little ones play as well? They're less susceptible to this virus and less of a threat of spreading it, and I don't think it's quite fair.
Thank you,
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Okay, Ms. Melanie, over.
Hello, I'm Melanie Ogun from Gray, Tennessee. Have any of you all sat down and went through virtual learning with a kid that's your kid or somebody else's to see what it's like? Don't worry, it won't take long. If you've got a spare 2 hours a day or 10 hours a week, that ought to cover it. That's the lack of education that they're receiving. You need to sit down and look, observe who has classes, how short they are, and who just sits there and posts links. That's not learning. And making Wednesdays optional, really, that should not be an option. We're already at a deficit on learning. The typical school year is 180 days a year of school. That's 1,170 hours a year. Per our teacher, we were told that 5 days of virtual is equal to 1 day in school. We missed 39 days last year. This year, we've had 50 possible school days, but we've only been in person 9 days. So 41 days of virtual is equivalent to 8 days in school. So we're 33 days behind this school year plus 39 days from last school year. That's 72 days of learning we've missed. That's 468 hours of learning that we'll never get back. How are our kids supposed to advance and learn when we're this far behind? My now junior took 3 classes last year, AP classes, In those classes, he had 100 or higher average in those classes. Then he took his national standardized AP test to get college credit, and he failed 2 out of those 3 tests. Because of the COVID, we didn't get to cover all 3 modules he was tested on at Boone. So he's now a junior this year at Boone, taking 3 AP classes again in trigonometry. And he's trying to learn trigonometry virtually. Have you all, anybody ever taken trigonometry, and would you like to take it virtually? He's also taken AP chemistry. He's trying to learn that virtually as well. Oh, and also trigonometry and advanced algebra are on the ACT that he's going to be taking coming up. Virtual learning is not learning, and none of this is our teacher's fault. So we're not able to go to school here in Washington County, but meanwhile in the rest of our region, hospitals, medical offices, school daycares, which I understand our school's going to be opening a daycare with Johnson City, retail stores, grocery stores, Powell's Food City, private schools, vendor farms, and all these other businesses are thriving. And it's solely because they are run on capitalism and not the taxpayers' money. This virus has a 95 to 97.75% recovery rate. I work in the medical field, and I have for 21 plus years. So I'm aware of all the precautions and the risks that go along with COVID. 1 day a week, I work directly with COVID patients. I've been exposed countless times, and chances are everyone in this room has, unless you live in a bubble. I have known 8 people personally with the virus. 1 went to the ER, there were 0 admissions to the hospital, and they've all recovered. Regarding quarantines in the healthcare field, we do temperature checks daily. We wear masks, just like they do at school. If exposed by a coworker unknowingly, we take our temperature 3 times a day for 2 weeks to make sure that we don't have any symptoms or any issues whatsoever, and we use common sense. I recommended earlier, before the school year started, to Dr. Flannery and Dr. Keys that we utilize Boones Creek Middle School, since we already owned it, it was for sale, and we already paid the water and electricity there, and the new Boones Creek School near the Ridges, the one that's not filled to capacity, and space all these kids out, and let's get ready to educate them. And we could use social distancing. And I also mentioned about renting large tents and having classes outside, whatever it took. And now I hear that we're opening a daycare at the new Boones Creek Middle School with Johnson City Schools. Shame on whoever came up with this idea. We can babysit 20 kids per classroom, but we can't educate 20 kids per classroom. As far as staffing issues go, you should have your principals, your assistant principals, your guidance counselor, your art, your music, your gym teachers, and your nurses filling in these positions where there's no one to fill in and teach these children. We should follow the guidelines of the medical field and utilize common sense and look at recovery rates. Remember these numbers: 468 hours behind in learning, 72 days behind in learning. The Tennessee Education Commissioner states the data shows a significant decrease in reading and math proficiency. She states this is urgent and it's due to school closure and virtual learning. What are we going to do to educate our children? Virtual learning is not learning. This is supposed to be the Board of Education, not the Board of Babysitting, where we go out and have new ventures and business deals. We need to educate our kids and get them back in the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Director's report, Dr. Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to welcome Student Board Member Caleb Anderson, Daniel Boone High School senior. How are things going with Daniel Boone?
We're back virtual, so that's fine. But from what I saw when we were in school, I mean, the students surprisingly they wore their masks and they wore them right. And, you know, the social distancing when it was necessary, when it was able to happen, happened. And I was genuinely surprised, actually, the amount of participation we had within the student body.
I concur. I went to Boone, Crockett, and every 6-year-old to 18-year-old student wore those masks. Thank you for those comments. Board members, you will find in BOE Connect a document called the LEA Compliance Report. we are obliged to present this to the board prior to November the 30th of every year for your approval. Now, I'm going to recommend approval by the board. I can tell you all about it if you want to hear it. If you've got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But Mr. Chairman, I am requesting and recommend approval of that report once everybody's had a chance to glance at those two paragraphs.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
LEA 4 compliance report.
Motion by Mr. Fleener to
Second.
accept the report, and a second by Mr. Masters. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Ms. Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Thank you, and Chairman Day, this does require your signature if you'd be so kind to do that before you leave this evening.
Okay.
Right. Next, a bid review is now handled by staff and brought to the board as part of the director's report. We've got a number of bid level purchases for your consideration this evening. Bid documents should be in BOE Connect, I hope by now, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the intrepid Jared Adams to come forward and lead us through that process.
We had an opportunity to apply for the grant that we got last year for conversion from diesel buses to propane buses. So we bid out 6 propane buses. Earlier this month, we went to, Dr. Flannery and I went to the Q committee to propose the purchase of propane buses. My understanding is, while I was there, the Q committee approved that request. Budget committee approved it, and it went through the county commission where they approved the purchase of 6 propane buses. So we bid those out. We opened those bids today. We were pleasantly surprised in that we were anticipating those buses to cost about $93,000, which is what they cost last year. But Cumberland, which is the third one on that list, came in at just under $87,000, which is a great deal of savings, about $7,000 per bus. Accompanied with the information, knowing that if we do receive this grant, which it looks pretty good for us, we'll get an extra up to 35% off the cost of that bus, which will be a total savings to the county commission of about $182,000. So our recommendation would be to accept the low bid of Cumberland as the bus company. Tony Roberts, our transportation supervisor, was there when we opened the bids. We discussed them. Tawana McKinney was there. We made sure that the specifications of the engine meets the specifications of the grant, so that we are eligible again for up to 35% off the cost of the bus. So I don't know if did I get to put that in the form of a motion? No, I didn't. Somebody put that in the form.
Okay. Is that it on that?
That's that on the propane buses.
We need a motion to approve that.
I have a question, a couple. I mean, one, there needs to be some clarification. It's not the county commission's money, it's money that's our money from the school board. It's been appropriated for the school, so how we use it is up to our choice. When did our last set of propane buses go into service?
They started in August of this month, of this school year.
Okay. So it started in August, now we're virtual. I mean, how much experience, I guess I'm kind of curious about how much experience we've had with the propane buses so far that makes us want to move forward with purchasing another set of them.
That's a great question. My information, talking to the mechanics and the supervisors at the bus garage, as well as the drivers who are actually driving the 5 buses, they all love them. There's no complaints whatsoever. We're saving time in the bus garage, not having to worry about the engine parts, the diesel parts.
Right. Well, I mean, I think this is the first this board's heard of this, that we're buying propane buses. Correct me if I'm wrong. Has this come in front of the board earlier this
I don't
year?
know that this new bid has.
But the fact that we're buying propane versus diesel
Well,
versus something else.
Let
this
me,
year?
no, I don't think we've discussed that,
That's all right.
but I got a thought on that. Just a personal thought.
Well, I
If
would
we,
just,
I know what you're saying, and I thought about this the other day, but we've already invested in propane buses, and we're keeping them for 15 or plus years. I don't know, do we wait, I know exactly what you're saying, but do we wait 5 years to see if the propane, because if we buy new diesel buses, we're gonna keep them for 15 plus years.
and I'm not, Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying we need to buy diesel. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
have we
yeah.
looked, I mean, I don't think this board's heard any kind of evaluation of the propane versus the diesel.
Right. I just don't know how
So
we're gonna get one.
that's my concern.
Yeah.
Well, and if I can address that, Mr. Meredith, when we applied for the grant last year, we did not only a cost comparison on just the money, but we did a comparison on how much time and effort would go into taking care of an upkeep of a propane bus. And again, based on that data that we received, we feel fairly confident it's going to save us money, save us time, save us effort. And the buses generally are, well, in our opinion, just as good, if not better, than a diesel bus. So,
Keith, Mr. Irvin, you got something?
Well, we've run a bus, the propane bus, for what, half a month? And we've got all this data. I can't see it. The people that I've talked to that's driving the bus are telling me they're using about twice as much propane as they do diesel fuel. So if we're paying X amount of dollars for propane per gallon, and it's using twice as much, then it's costing more to run the propane bus than it is a diesel bus. I cannot sit here and purchase a propane bus that we've only run for a month. So, you bring this back to me in 3 or 4 years, I'd be interested, maybe. But a gas motor will not last as long as a diesel. Anybody in the business will tell you that. So that's how I feel about it. I can't support it.
Do we need to take action on this tonight?
the reason I brought it so early to the board is the grant that we can apply for is due the first week of December. So we have to have the purchase and the bid and the agreement to purchase buses to apply for the grant.
Here's my problem with it. I understand what you're saying, but we done went through all this and we got all the information.
Yeah, but we don't know nothing about them, Jason.
I understand that, Keith, but we made a
We've made a commitment.
a
We're trying them.
So
We are
what I'm
trying.
saying is, but how long are you gonna try them? But if you buy more diesel buses today, in other words, we thought they was
We gotta
better.
buy buses every year.
If we thought they were better because we bought them, what I'm asking is, are you gonna turn around and buy diesel buses after you've already said that the propane were better because we bought them? But now we're gonna say we're not sure they're better, we're gonna buy more diesel and ride them for 15 more years and then,
We have to buy buses every year.
okay.
That's the way I feel about it. We have to buy buses every year.
All right, so, Mr. Flair,
Thank you, sir.
good to see you back there.
I appreciate it. we talked about this last year, I remember when this come up, and I was excited that we were gonna save $120,000 a year, you know, by going to propane buses. We're supposed to have that cost savings. Only thing is when it come time to budget time, we didn't have those cost savings. I think it was a $20,000 or $40,000 increase because we had to buy more propane. We budgeted. So with that being said, I can't support it just because we don't have the run time on them to see how they do, which I think is important because they are more expensive. I know we listened to several reasons why that they were better, and I understand that, but I can't support them when I don't know how good they are, you know, what little time we've had them on the road. So.
Well, and I will say, you know, when we looked into getting propane, we did our research.
Yes, sir.
There are other school systems, other municipalities that are running propane buses with no issues whatsoever. And that's school systems. Gentleman in Chattanooga, I can't think of his name right now, I sat through a meeting with him, with the Tennessee Clean Fuels people, and a lot of their municipal buses and truck fleets are running on gas and electricity in Chattanooga. Again, all I can tell you is what we know from the research we did. Now, granted, we don't have our own Washington County experience, but we have our experience from other school systems and other, again, municipalities that are converting to propane. And I wouldn't be up here espousing buying these if I didn't believe in it, and I wouldn't be up here saying it if Tony Roberts didn't want them. If Tony told me he hated propane, we need to be running diesels, then I wouldn't be standing here right now. But again, you know, my understanding, Keith, I know you talked about the bus driver saying they're using twice the fuel. I asked Tony about that, and right now he told me we're using about the same amount of fuel, maybe a little bit more, but he attributes that to the drivers having to get a little bit more used to actually driving the bus because it takes off a lot faster, and they're pretty much used to having to put the pedal to the metal to get the bus to go. As a diesel, they don't have to do this with a propane bus. But as they get more and more experience with it, he feels confident that the that the amount of propane we're using will come down.
Mr. Rell's got a question.
Is there any way that you could get us the data so we could look at it again? I mean, something fairly quickly. You don't, not tonight, but in the next few days, because we actually have another meeting, I guess, on the 23rd, and give us time to review it, you know, and see what the actual data is.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. McKinney should have all of that because it's part of the grant. So that's not a problem at all. I can get that to you guys.
Can we get, we're going to be pushed on the 19th. Can we just email that out?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody read it?
Sure.
Is, second, two more. What is your cost difference to the school system in propane versus diesel?
I don't have that exact number. When Tony and I talked about it right now, I believe it's about 6 cents a gallon for propane, and it's comparable for diesel. But now, please don't quote me on that because I don't know that for 100% sure.
What is roughly a difference in price between a diesel bus and propane bus?
Well, that's one of the points I was making at the very beginning. We were last year when we bought the propane buses, they were about $92,500, almost $93,000, and a typical diesel bus was about $84,000. So this year, for whatever reason, Cumberland dropped their price to $86,000, $86,500 or close to it. So it's about $2,500 more.
There was a large maintenance, I think, was the big thing that sold when we all went through it the first time. There were some parts that they were spending thousands of dollars a year on that these buses don't even have. So you ain't gonna spend it because they ain't got it.
Well, and again, I wish Tony was here, he'd answer your questions, but we have conversations like this all the time. He's our main mechanic. He is our best mechanic. And he tells me propane is the way to go. They hate working on diesels. It's words out of his mouth.
Mr. Meredith?
Yeah, Dr. Adams, what's the grant amount per bus that we're looking at?
Well, you know, it's a math problem. So it's at $87,000 a bus. Maximum amount we'll get is 35% of that. So we're saving close to $30,000. on that.
Okay, so the grant would be 35% of the propane, each propane bus purchase.
Yes, about a savings of just over $182,000.
Okay. Is this through the Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think what bothers most of the board members, it goes back to I know we have a lot of information based on other people's research, and you all did a great job of pulling all that together to get us to go down the propane bus route. But now, we should have our own data. And I know that's what Mr. Riddle was asking for. And I think that, I would like for us to see our transportation supervisor put together a comparison of operational costs for our propanes that we have versus our diesel, including maintenance time, cost of fuel, etc., per mile. And that's what we're looking at. And I would appreciate it if you could bring that back to the board so we can see in black and white and quantitatively what everybody says, well, we like working on the buses, they're better, but, show it to me in dollars and cents.
I can do that.
The only thing about that, Mitch, is we've not worked on it.
We work with what we've got, is my point.
Well, I
we do,
understand.
and I don't mean just right now, I mean every 6 months or once a year, we're getting a report on how our fleet's doing on a cost per mile basis.
So, Mr. Flannery.
I'd like to make a motion, we table, or we postpone the propane buses till the 23rd meeting, November 23rd meeting.
Okay, you got a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, Miss.
The 23rd of November?
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is it's not due till the first week of December.
I do have a comment.
Yes.
Mr. Meredith, your comment notwithstanding, the resolution passed by the county commission specified propane buses.
It did.
And several commissioners were excited about the purchase of
It did.
propane buses. So if the board goes back to diesel, I'll need to go back to HEW and start that process again.
But on that same note though, I read about that in the paper, so I found out we were gonna buy propane buses by seeing it in the paper. Just like when the propane buses come in, I learned about it by watching 5 o'clock news. And as a board member, spending X amount $1,000, I couldn't believe that the HEW would approve something that I had to read about in the paper.
Were you aware that we were going to buy buses this year?
Yes, that was a part of the
Were you
capital
aware that we
plan.
bought propane buses last year?
Yes, but did you put on there that it was propane buses?
I didn't put diesel buses last year.
Well,
No, you brought it up to propane buses last year. That's the reason we had
But in years
100.
past, and I don't want to argue with you.
No, I'm not either. But as a board member, I don't need to read stuff in the paper and learn about it in the paper, is what I'm saying. I shouldn't have to turn on the 5 o'clock news to wonder what's going on in their own system. That's
Well,
my-
we had in our board retreat, we wanted to discuss the propane buses. And now we find out that we're already went to the county commission. Now, I've got to say that.
I want to say, again, I'm hearing what y'all are saying, but I really don't understand. I kind of, with Dr. Flannery, we voted to use propane buses. Why would anybody
We
think we'd
voted
go back to
last year
diesel?
to buy propane buses and try them. Okay? That's what I voted against it, but I was told we was going to try them. We're trying them. If they work, we'll buy more of them. If they don't, we're not going to. But I'm not going to sit here and vote to buy new buses till I see if the propanes is going to last. I know how long a diesel will last.
Mr. Hammond?
And you may have already said this, but I could hear, how long is this bid good for? Just 30 days or?
We gotta have it by 1st of December, Dr.
Yeah, it's not so
Allen.
much the bid that's the time crunch, it's the application for the grant.
Okay.
Once the application due date passes, if we vote to go propane and we are past that date, we will not save up to 35% of the cost of the bus.
Per bus, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we got a motion and a second to postpone this. Can we get a roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
No.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin,
Yes.
Ms. Dillinger,
Yes.
Mr. Fleener.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Day.
No. Okay, anything else?
So,
3 more.
Okay. Proceed.
All right. Sorry, Jennifer, my thing timed out.
Mr. Bennett, don't let us hold you up if you've got to go, we can,
Pleasure of the board. I'm happy to sit here and listen.
okay. Okay, good.
Let's do the gap bed ones.
I didn't know.
Sorry, I didn't see which one's the second one.
Yeah.
All right, the next 3 bids, we bid them out separately because they're separate items, but this is part of the CTE money that you all had made available, part of the $250,000, and some of the things that the CTE program, specifically at David Crockett, are wanting to buy are more than $10,000, so we bid that out. The first one is a gap bed engine lathe. Basically, it's a machine that can bend and twist metal into different shapes and cut it. The gap bed apparently has an extra piece to it that you can use longer pieces of metal, of sheet metal, and wider pieces than what a typical engine lathe. I had to look that up, but it sounded like I knew what I was talking about, I'm sure. So we are going to buy, we wanted to buy 2 of those. Daniel Maupin, teacher at David Crockett, brought that to us. We bid those out. We had 4 different bids come in. It's important to note that the first bidding firm there, Kentech, out of Kentucky, they were the ones that helped Mr. Maupin get the specifications together. And so we used what Daniel wanted, but also used Kentech's specifications, so we made sure we get the right piece of equipment. And during the bidding process, the second group, Baldwin, I believe they're out of New Jersey. Say that again?
Florida.
Out of Florida. They bid the exact same machine, but it was cheaper. So and they're offering free shipping. And I'll talk more about that here in a minute. So our recommendation for the gap bed engine lathes is to go with the Baldwin Company for a grand total of $38,890. So that is the first CTE bid we're going to. Jennifer, if you go to the next one.
Are you gonna do along
We
with?
need to do these individual or
Well,
together?
I'll cut to the chase here. We have the gap bed engine lathes, we have the engine lathes, and we have the vertical milling machine. And basically the same 3 to 4 companies bid on all of those. Baldwin was the low bid on all of them, and they're offering to ship it all free in one bundle, except they have one lathe that is on back order, and as soon as we send the purchase order to them, they'll order it. It's going to take about 90 to 100 days to get here, and they'll ship that to us free. So we bid them all out because they're different things, but ultimately we're going to recommend that we go with the Baldwin Company because A, they were low bid on every item, and they're offering free shipping. So,
Mr. Meredith?
Mr. Chairman, without objection, since this has been in BOE Connect, I'd move that we go ahead and accept all 3
Second.
bids by Baldwin.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Just one question. This was the items that we received grants for, is that correct?
no,
No.
This is what we approved in our budget for CTE for them to buy. Supply. All right, another discussion, roll call vote, Ms. Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Ms. Dillinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
and I have one last item. Brad Hale and I were talking about some of the purchasing cooperatives that we have memberships in that we go through and not go through the bidding process, but they're there. And so to make it official for the board to be notified and agree to that we are we have memberships in the following 4 purchasing cooperatives. We are a member of Buy Board, which is kind of that's where we bought all the scoreboards. We are a member of Sourcewell. which is where we buy different types of equipment. Most recently, I believe Mr. Patrick's looking through them to buy some bleacher equipment. We are also a member of PEPPM, Cooperative Purchasing. That's Mr. Fulbright's in that too. It has the ability to do that. It's office stuff, technology stuff, and then of course Tennessee statewide contracts. That's the purchasing cooperative that we use to buy our trucks and our vans for our maintenance and food service departments. Just wanted to make you guys aware of that, and I guess maybe just, I don't know if we need a vote to say, hey, it's okay, we're in this, but Mr. Hale thought for our auditors, it would be smart of us to at least go have it somewhere in the minutes that we acknowledge that we have memberships and that we use these purchasing cooperatives to order materials.
So it depends on if these are new, or are one of these new?
To be honest, Brad, I know the PEPPM, Curtis has used that in the past. I know we've bought trucks in the past. Sourcewell, I know Mr. Patrick has told me, he's used them in the past. And Buy Board, I know we've used those in the past. So
it wouldn't hurt if you want to make a motion to just officially reaffirm that you agree to let us be in these co-ops. That way there's no question.
Okay, we have a motion.
Make a motion.
I'll second that, assuming our purchasing staff has vetted them, and that's what they think we need to do.
Mr. Irvin?
Is this, if anything's bought, it has to come before the full board, right? If it's $10,000 or dollars or
It's
more.
over the 10,000 threshold.
Not,
But our policy says $10,000, correct? If it's over $10,000, it has to come through us. Because we raised it from 5,000 to 10 last year.
If it's going through a contract of service like a state contract, it doesn't have to.
If it's,
Go ahead, Mr. Hale.
I was just saying, if it's a capital item, it has to come to the board if it's a capital item. But if it's, like Dr. Flannery describes, if it's not a capital item, then
Okay.
talk to you.
well, I'll support it, but I want to amend that motion that anything that's be purchased through that it's $10,000 or more has to come before the full board before it's purchased.
You're saying even if it's not a capital item?
Yes, anything that needs to be bought, 10,000 or more, come before the full board.
Second.
Second. So we got a motion to amend, Mr. Irvin, and a second by Mr. Fleener. Anything through this, that be
Purchase
cooperative, anything 10,000 or over comes through the board.
Is that for approval or just knowledge?
Approval. That's what I understood the
Chairman?
motion. Yes.
So let me just clarify something for the board. So you would be a member of a purchasing cooperative, and what that does is it keeps you from having to let out bids. The same purchasing rules apply for this as would for anything else, but if you're a member of a co-op, you don't have to let out bids. So you're talking about actually two completely separate things. If your current board policy doesn't require bids for purchases, doesn't require board approval, then this doesn't change that. All this does is if you're a member of a co-op and Mr. Hale's department sees a price quote from that co-op and it says, he can get a bunch of widgets for this price from the co-op, that keeps him from having to go out and get a bunch of quotes because he can trust that co-op's going to give him the low price. So y'all are actually talking about two separate issues. Mr. Hale, are you there?
Yes.
Have I adequately explained that?
Yes, correct, because the co-op does the bidding for us.
Right.
So therefore,
And so in terms of whether the board has to approve it or not, I'd have to look at your board policy about purchases.
Yeah.
What you're about to do is you're about to basically amend the board policy with respect to purchasing from co-ops, and you're putting in a new procedure that doesn't exist for your other purchases.
Well, that's why I was pointing out, currently it only says capital items. So like if you buy a vehicle that's over $10,000, that requires board approval. And state auditors hold us to that because you said 10,000 as that. Now, if we bought a bunch of Chromebooks that are approved to buy through a grant and there's $20,000 worth of Chromebooks, we've not had to bring that to the board in the past because the budgeted dollars were available already. Or if it was a grant and that grant pays for the funds, that's not required board approval in the past, but I think what you're doing now is that would change. Am I correct on that, Attorney Bennett?
Yes, Mr. Hale, you're correct. Basically, what the board would be doing with this motion is you would effectively be amending your board policy on purchases to create a new requirement for Mr. Hale's office.
That comes because we've bought a bunch of Chromebooks and we've had purchase orders that were.
But we knew we was buying them.
Yeah. I'm just pointing out what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why I said, are we doing it for knowledge or approval?
So, Mr. Fleener's got something.
No, I'd like to rescind my second because I think it needs to come back in policy.
Yes,
Looked at policy.
I think so.
Mhm.
So,
That's all right with you.
Yeah. I just want to be notified. That's all I'm asking.
Me too.
That's all I'm
And
asking.
that makes sense, Mr. Master mentioned, could that be done for notification? That could easily be part of the director's report for the, just, FYI, or even part of the weekly update.
yeah, not have to vote on it.
Unless the board wants to, and that's well within the board's authority.
Okay. All right, so we're back to the approval of,
The first
we rescinded the second and the,
No, we rescinded the
For the
amendment,
amendment.
not
Yeah.
the motion.
so we're ready to vote on the motion.
And the
Okay.
motion was
The motion was to approve the,
using that.
I don't know the name of the, has it got a
Purchasing
name? I can't see
cooperatives.
it.
Purchasing cooperative.
Purchasing cooperative.
Yeah, the motion would need to have those names for the auditors to honor, to not write us up, which I think we've done
It does,
before.
yeah.
Yeah, as long as the motion has those 4 names.
Okay.
So, one question
Yes.
before we do that. So, like Mr. Irvin said, I think we need knowledge of purchases over $10,000, and he would probably like the ability to approve those. So we probably want knowledge and approval by the board is what we're seeking. I believe, is that right, sir?
Yeah, that's what
That
I,
needs to go through policy.
So we just need, we know that's what we want, we just need the right direction to go with it.
Yeah.
Through policy.
Through
Through
policy.
policy.
Now, Dr. Keys will dig that out for next month.
I want it now.
Thank you.
Okay, so roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Jason, you want to sign that? I'll send that off.
Another item, every year, we receive communications from our community about social studies instruction related to religion. Over the past several days, I have had emails from multiple parents on the subject, and I know that some of you have been contacted as well. It is important for our stakeholders to know that the standards taught in Tennessee's public school systems are not developed locally. Tennessee Code Annotated 491314 provides that each local education agency shall be responsible for developing and implementing the instructional program under the state standards adopted by the state board. What we teach in Washington County is the same as what is taught in Sullivan County, or Sumner County, or Memphis, for that matter. The Tennessee State Board of Education, therefore, sets the standards we teach in Washington County. The Washington County Board of Education does not have the authority to change state standards. It is important to understand how these standards are reviewed. Excuse me. State Board Policy 3.209 provides that each set of standards must be reviewed every 6 years in consultation with the Tennessee Department of Education. The time for public comment is always included in that process. Further, before any new set of standards goes into effect, it must be vetted by both the House and Senate Education Committees of the Tennessee General Assembly. In short, no one person or governmental body is in charge of what is taught in Tennessee's public schools. A lot of people, including elected officials, have a say in what is taught in our classroom. The state board posts all public school standards on its website for review. The course description for 7th grade social studies says, in part, this course will teach students about the historical context of ancient and major world religions and will follow a common template for major world religions so as not to promote any religion. Under the section Other, I would like to tell the board that today at the state cross-country meet, Crockett's girls came in and by the way, there were 32 teams there. Crockett's girls came in 6th in the state. That is the highest that school has ever placed in any state meet in its 50-year history. Boone girls placed 9th in the state. Boone's Cameron Winfield placed was 14th overall and was an all-state runner. Boone's boys was 7th in the state. By the way, Boone has no seniors. Connor Wingfield made all-state and was 15th overall in that competition. Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Okay. Before we move into these other action items,
Jason,
we'll do,
can I say something
Yes.
first? Getting back to the social studies, I am the one that put these out to everybody. And I guess, like you said, I don't guess we can change anything, but I do want to voice my opinion. The email I received was, we're teaching Islam in 7th grade, which it is religion, it is history, but so is Christianity. So my problem is, how come we're not teaching Christianity? That's my problem with it. But I understand your position, but still, just, to me, it's not right.
I inquired on this 4 years or 5 years ago, and I thought we were teaching also Christianity.
Yes, major world religions are all Protestant.
Okay. One other thing though, 7 years ago, there was 2 systems that applied for a waiver from the Islam teaching in Tennessee. And I don't know if they received that or not. Do you know if there is any such a waiver? It went through the legislature when they were setting this up?
I'm not aware of.
I know there was one other issue that 36 systems had exempted themselves from. I don't have that. I didn't know this, but there was one law that was passed and we looked at, and 36 systems had tried to exempt themselves from that. But I didn't know if that was a possibility, because I think parents should have a say in the curriculum, and we are East Tennessee, and I don't necessarily think what works in Memphis works in Johnson City or Washington County, but so I didn't know, Mr. Bennett, is there a waiver for such a criteria, I guess I would say?
The local board of education can ask the commissioner and then the state board to waive anything that you so desire. It would be within their discretion to grant or deny that waiver application.
Well, and the other thing, I can see it being taught, but I wouldn't want one covered for 3 or 4 days and one just covered for an hour in a class. And that's what I want to make sure too on the Christianity, because of the way our country is founded on the principles of Christianity and God. But anyway,
thank you. Ms. Dillon.
Is this something that we could take up with their legislators? I mean, is this something we could mention to them?
I think closer to the point, the State Board of Education set those standards, so if you want to exact a change, you should approach the state board.
But couldn't they kind of be our spokesperson for that?
If the General Assembly passes a law, then the state board is obligated to follow.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
You might consider asking one of your level 5 social studies teachers to maybe teach the board the lesson that's in question here. And so you board members can make an informed decision about whether it strays too far toward teaching a religion as opposed to teaching about a religion. And that also puts you in a position of being able to answer questions from your constituents, because then you actually know what's being taught. And if you as the board think, we just heard a level 5 teacher teach a lesson, and we think it goes a little further than is appropriate, you then have a very unique perspective to petition the state board to ask for a waiver. Because I bet you a jelly donut, most of those folks hadn't sat through one of these lessons.
Good point.
Is that something we could do?
Oh, we could.
Sure.
Okay.
I would add that in my 25 years in central office, there has never been a successful complaint against the way we present world religion. Never.
Mr. Meredith?
I want to shift gears just for a minute. One of our speakers earlier, and this kind of bothered me, and I'd heard it earlier, and I've looked in our policy to see if there was anything that prevented it. But we had one of our speakers comment that our teachers were putting other parents down on social media. And I don't know if that's factual or not. I don't do social media. If it is, that's a little disconcerting to me. And I'm glad Mr. Bennett's on here because I know we have to walk a fine line between freedom of speech and appropriate behavior by employees of an entity. I'd like for us to look at, you know, is there a way to create some type of social media policy that would apply to our employees? It does not apply. The one I've seen does not prevent what happened earlier. And if it did, there needs to be some consequences. So if that's true, if we have parents, we have a social media policy, but it's for use in school. It's not, I don't think it addresses the employees' use of social media. So, Ashley, Mr. Bennett, I just ask that you all maybe look at that, see if there are any other systems that do such a thing, and
Yes.
let's consider it at a future meeting.
In point of fact, sir, because of the Black Lives Matter discussions, because of social unrest and all manner of topics for the last several months, a lot of boards have been adopting specific social media policies, and I've actually developed what I think is a better approach, which is a code of professionalism. And I'll send that to Dr. Flannery and Dr. Keys and to Mr. Fleener for y'all to digest and pass around. Also, unless I'm mistaken, I believe that your current policy manual does speak to professionalism and interaction with the community. And the way that it's drafted, I think, is broad enough to encompass the use of social media. And in broad terms, what it means is when you're speaking to the public through whatever platform, and you can be identified as an employee of the Washington County Board of Education, the expectation is that you are a professional at all times. And if you don't identify yourself as an employee of the board, then we just expect you to use good judgment. That message is reinforced in the teacher's ethics training that I do for the administration every year. And Dr. Flannery will recall that one of the things that I touched on specifically this year was the use of social media. And I'm sure your administrators took that and folded it out to the schools. So to Mr. Meredith's point, I think that we can be clearer about our policies, but I think the current policies, sprinkled with good judgment, are already clear enough that you can't denigrate parents and students in social media. If the parent in question will share more specific information with Dr. Flannery, I think we're in a position where we can look into that and move forward. If the facts demonstrate that would be appropriate.
I had a question that went back to the 6th. I'd like to get a copy, if there's any way you could just get us a copy of the 6th and 7th grade social studies books for us to look through. I'd like to see.
The textbooks?
Yes, the textbooks, please. I'd like to check into and see what's.
All right, anything else? Shall we proceed?
That's all I do.
Okay. Under action items, we're gonna hold up on those committee actions for a minute and let Mr. Bennett, Mr. Fleener in policy had a couple that he wanted to involve Mr. Bennett in, is that right?
Yeah, 3.6, or 6.3161, discipline for students receiving special education. It's up for second reading. A couple of people had asked me questions about it. Mr. Bennett was able to join us tonight. So I guess Ashley, if you want to kick us off, and then Mr. Bennett explain to us the rationale behind that. We'll go ahead and get this one out of the way.
Back when we were going through section 6 review, we were also going through federal monitoring. Mindy asked me if we had a policy on disciplinary procedures for special education. I said we have a special ed policy. She said okay. Mr. Bennett and I spoke, and he said, then you need to look at Hamilton counties. I drafted it for them. We need to make sure that we're following federal and state law. And so this policy in front of you is federal and state law. It was drafted for Hamilton County by Mr. Bennett, and some of the names were changed inside of it to match our job titles. Not mine, but Mindy and Mr. Murphy. When I sent it to TSBA on second reading, because as you all know, when you all do anything on first reading, I automatically send it to TSBA and Mr. Bennett before second reading. Because once it's finalized on second reading, it's good to go, right? So I want them to look at it again to check anything. Now, TSBA recommended changing the title because we do not put procedures in policy. We do not want to confuse the two. So you will see that the title is in green, discipline for students receiving special education. Emily from TSBA also recommended changing the number. That's why it's in green. She said it should go under our suspension policy, which is also up tonight. That's why Mr. Fleener asked to add it back on. I had pulled it from the last policy meeting because we could not pass that policy when it references this policy, and this policy has yet to exist inside the policy. So they need to happen at the same time. So 6.316 suspension, and this would go under that. Now, Mr. Bennett is here to talk to you about questions you may have inside of this, since it concerns federal and state law. Mr. Bennett?
Sure. So, as Dr. Keyes mentioned, this is something that I've developed, and really not just for Hamilton County, but for all of our districts, because TSBA does not have a special education specific policy. But frankly, most of the litigation that districts get into involving student discipline frequently centers around special ed issues. And it's really difficult to find a single document with all the rules in one place. So I sat down and pulled together all the sources from state and federal law and put it in one spot. There were a couple of special ed directors around the state who I think really do understand the rules, and I got their input, and one of them was Dr. Myers. This is something that's really not a surprise to any of your administrators either, because again, this is state and federal law. And I have actually been teaching administrators these exact terms for the last 10 years at the Tennessee Department of Education Student Discipline Conference. And I know Mr. Murphy's been a faithful attendee there for 10 years, and maybe some of your other administrators have been as well. But again, it's state and federal law. If you scroll down, what you'll find that maybe jumps out at some of y'all is there's some timelines for some meetings. And I know that a couple of y'all have been asked some questions about, well, wait a minute, what's that all about? So, and as an aside, this is also true for general education. Whenever a student under Tennessee law has been suspended for 5 days, doesn't matter if it's special ed or a gen ed student, if a kid's been suspended for more than 5 days, you're supposed to get the team together and talk about what's going on with that kid. Because the General Assembly says, okay, if you're suspending a kid for 5 days for the same behavior.
I don't understand.
Beg your pardon?
Keep going.
Siri.
Theory.
Okay. if you suspend a kid for more than 5 days for the same behavior, then what you're doing is you're wasting that teacher's time. And, you know, Mr. Masters, Mr. Day, you probably have some conversations at the house every now and then about, you know, this kid's taking up my time. And Ms. Dillinger, I'm sure that back in the day, you had those issues too. So what the statute assumes here is, if you've got a 5-day suspension, either 1 day or a bunch of them stacked up, then probably the people are starting to see patterns. And so what you want to do is you want to get in front of that pattern. You want to figure out, all right, how do we not get day number 6? And so, again, state law already says that the administration needs to meet with the kid or the parents and develop a plan to figure out, how do we not get to that day 6? How do you help the kid move past that behavior? And how do you help the teacher not have to deal with it again? The plan is to reduce the time you spend disciplining the same kids for the same problems, right? That's a state law issue. So what we did in this policy is, if you look starting at line 11 through line 19 on the first page, what we did was we said, you know, that's a really good provision of Tennessee law. And so we plugged that into the special ed policy, and we just added the special ed case manager, thinking, you know what, if you've got a special ed kid who's having a difficult time adjusting to school rules, what kind of supports do we need to put in place to stop it, so that the teacher doesn't have to keep dealing with the same thing over and over again? And the systems that do this and do it really well, they really see a reduction in the amount of time that teachers have to spend doing this kind of stuff. And I was talking with Dr. Keyes about this earlier. My understanding is that at least some of your schools are already doing this very thing. They're just not calling it this particular kind of procedure. Dr. Keyes, is that correct?
Yes, sir, you're correct. Daniel Boone does this for any suspension for 5 days. The case manager's not in there currently, but that would definitely change to match the law. And I'm sure that David Crockett does something similar and could do this as well.
Okay, so the goal obviously is to address behavior early, keep the kid in the classroom, and keep the teacher from having to deal with the same problem over and over again. By bringing into the discussion folks who have the expertise to support the behavior. And my understanding from Dr. Myers is that, first of all, y'all now have a behavior specialist who can lend support to this. And I also understand that there are probably some very important civil rights issues at play here that probably suggest the board really needs to jump on making these changes. Dr. Myers, are you there by chance?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I would just, for special education, we have to answer for disproportionality and the percentage of students with disabilities that were disciplined. And the state has let us know that it is high and that we need to start working on it. If we don't get that down, there is a consequence, and that is a percentage of our federal funds is taken. So not only does this comply with the law, it also helps us establish some procedures and put some things in place. Largely we're already doing, but just to help tighten up to make sure that we don't get in any kind of issue where we're not receiving funds that we should be receiving, so that we can support our kids and our teachers.
And again, one of the things that hopefully happens here is you're supporting kids and keeping them in the classroom. You're helping them learn how to change their behavior. And frankly, you're not wearing teachers out with the same old, same old. And as Dr. Myers indicated, there is a federal oversight issue. And really one of the things that prompted me to start drafting this policy for our districts is that statewide, the disproportionality of kids with special education needs who are being suspended or expelled is through the roof. And the OCR is starting to take notice, and so we need to jump on this and change our procedures so that we can document what we're doing and change the result.
Mr. Hammond's got a question.
I just had a couple of questions. Number one, zero tolerance. If does this apply to that? I mean, does this exempt if they're in that bounds of zero tolerance?
Good question. So federal special education law does not recognize zero tolerance as such. It says that if the child has a disability, and if the child cannot control his or her behavior, then you've got to make accommodations for that. So if you have a child who, well, let's take a really extreme case. Let's say a child who has an emotional disturbance. And one of the ways that the child acts out is through physical aggression. Let's say he acts out one day and he strikes a teacher. Well, for most students, that would be a zero tolerance offense, and the child would be put out for 365 days. A child with special education, if his behavior is something he cannot control, and that's judged by the professional educators, they're the ones who make that determination, then there's an allowance made, because that's part of the behavior you expect with that disability, if it is. And so what you might do is you adjust the behavior intervention plan to address that child and train him not to do it. Let's change the facts. Let's say you have a child who maybe has a reading disability. He strikes a teacher. Well, there's nothing about a reading disability that has anything that explains why he struck a teacher. That child is going to be zero toleranced like any other kid, because he could have controlled his behavior. Now, he would still receive services. Now, having said that, there are 3 offenses which federal law doesn't care. They're so serious, even if the kid's behavior was a function of his disability, meaning even if he couldn't help himself, the child can still be put out of school for 45 days, no questions asked. That is a weapons offense, bringing a dangerous weapon to school, bringing an illegal drug to school, or assaulting a teacher and inflicting serious bodily harm. In those 3 scenarios, you could put the child out of school for 45 days. Doesn't matter why the child did it, even if it is a function of his disability. So, in other words, the same rules sort of apply, but there's an allowance for the fact that if the child can't control himself, we need to look at this as an educational issue, not a punishment issue. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, my second question is, you said we want to keep that child in the classroom as much as we can, and I agree with that. At what point in time will there be a cutoff point, like especially when we're doing the classes with inclusion? Because, I mean, is there going to be a cutoff point? Like, let's say we're in September, we suspend a student for 45 days for zero tolerance, bring them back. They continue to be a discipline issue in that class. Do we keep bringing them in that class, or do they?
Great question. So if you look at the bottom of the first page, Mr. Hammond, under manifestation, determination, review, then you go into the next page. What this policy lays out is, if you have behavior, I'm on the second page, if you have behavior that the student can't control, but you're still having these behaviors, then it means that the team needs to be doing something different. Maybe you need to look at a change of placement. Maybe the general education classroom lacks the kind of structure that this child needs, and so maybe you need to look at a behavioral classroom. Maybe you need to look at, and I say an alternative placement, not necessarily mean alternative school. I have one situation with another district where the child's behavior is particularly violent, and everyone agrees the child can't control his behavior. In that situation, we're looking at a residential placement out of state, because that's what this child needs in order to be supported. That child's not successful in the general education classroom. So, again, that NDR discussion there in that second page, that's where the team starts to work through and figures out, okay, What do we need to do differently? So in other words, Mr. Hammond, we don't believe that you put a child in a situation where he continues to misbehave and just say, well, gosh, we hope he does better next semester. We're not going to do that. That's not serving the child. That's not protecting your teachers.
Thank you.
Well,
I have a question. Do you have the policy in front of you, Scott?
I do.
Page 2, line 20 and 21. It says that in the case of a student receiving services under IDEA, the Assistant Director of Schools for Student Services will coordinate with the Assistant Director of Schools for Attendance and Discipline. We don't have two people that do that. That's the same person here.
Well, that's convenient then.
That's,
Coordination
we don't
meeting.
need to change that language in some way?
Well,
Dr. Flannery, that's.
that may be something that Dr. Keys missed. I don't know. Ashley, what say you?
Well, one of those people is Mindy, and then the other is Mr. Murphy. It says,
No, the Assistant Director for Attendance and Discipline is not Mindy.
no, it says the attendance, assistant in line 20, Assistant Director of Schools for Student Services.
That is Jim Murphy.
Okay, then I will change that.
And the Assistant Director for Attendance and Discipline is Jim Murphy.
So what do you
what's
want?
Mindy?
She's the Assistant Director for Special Education.
Which is what that should say then.
No,
Yeah, so I would suggest, so in application, what that's supposed to say is, in the case of a student who's receiving services under the IDEA, okay, and this is a scenario, by the way, where the behavior is not a function of the disability. Look back at line 16. This is behavior that the child could control. But because the child has a right to continue to receive services, then when you're developing an approach to how you're going to discipline the child, whoever is over discipline, whoever your assistant director is who is over the disciplinary process, that person coordinates with the person who is over IDEA services to develop a plan for where that child needs to be.
that it needs to say.
And the realization is, it might be the alternative school, but it might not. Maybe the child's behavior is such that you need to look at a temporary homebound placement because the child is a danger to himself and others. It may be that you can develop a behavioral program at the high school or an elementary school. That's intended to be flexible, recognizing that not every special need child is going to fit someone else's mold. So those two people need to be whoever is over the discipline, the DHA process, whoever's over DHA, that's the first person. Oh, I'm sorry. It needs to be whoever's over DHA and whoever is over IDEA. Those are the two people who need to coordinate that.
Dr. Flannery,
Mr. Murphy has nothing to do with DHA anymore.
So then it doesn't need to be Mr. Murphy. It should be whoever you're going to assign, Dr. Flannery, to be over the disciplinary hearing authority, that's the person whose title is there. Whoever is over IDEA services, that's the second person whose title is there.
I'm fixing it right now. That's a mistake on my part.
Good catch.
Okay. Dr. Flanner, anybody? Mr. Flanner?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass on second reading 1.803, 4.205, 5.403, 6.200, 6.3161, as amended with page 2, line 21, special education instead of student services.
Or whatever.
Mr. Flannery, I need to change that language throughout the policy.
Okay, so it's in multiple places.
Yes.
So instead of everywhere that it says Assistant Director of Schools for Student Services, it'll say Assistant Director of Schools, Special Education, correct?
Yes, and then, from Mr. Bennett's recommendation, I will need to change where it says Mr. Murphy to the chairman of the DHA, correct?
Okay.
Dr. Flannery?
The Assistant Director of Schools for Attendance and Discipline will be changed for the chairperson of
the disciplinary hearing authority.
Okay. You got that, Jennifer? And, all right, 6.308, 6.303, 6.309, 6.316, 6.317, 6.319, 6.4081, 6.410, 6.411, 6.412, 6.413, 6.414, 6.415, 6.500, 6.503, 6.505, 6.6000, 6.602, 6.704. On second reading, please, sir.
Second.
Second motion, and I can't repeat that.
Why not?
Should've got a better rhythm, I'm sorry.
In a second, any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Ms. Dillinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. While we're here, we might as well, yes, sir.
There's two more left, but can we take a 3-minute break, please, sir?
3-minute break.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, next on the list, we're gonna go back to athletics committee.
Oh, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
no.
you care to do those two, and
Yeah,
then we
let's
can let Mr. Benny
let's finish
go?
up, we got two policies left. I
Just in case
apologize.
he has something better to do tonight.
I apologize. I know it's a policy meeting.
You want to, Mr. Chairman, do you want to bring up, I just caught that, thank you. Do you care to pull up 1.400, the first one up there? A little bit more, pull it down a little bit. Yeah, that first one right there. You know, we talked about this at our last meeting, was that Monday? Tuesday, about this right here. So this is what our policy is about school board meetings. We don't have anything under a workshop. So what we can do, if you'll allow it, Mr. Chairman, is enter into lines 2 and 3, to where we can have a board workshop for everything planned and everything leading up to the meeting. And we can also move our regular board meetings to 5:30 instead of 6:30 p.m. If that's the direction you want to do, and I'd like to make a motion that we pass 1.400, waive first reading, and just go ahead and approve it on first and second reading.
We got a motion.
Second.
We got a second. Any more discussion?
So you're wanting to move it to 5:30?
Yes, sir. Since we don't have any committee meetings,
Right.
beforehand, we could back this up to 5:30. I think it's, I think it's important. I mean, we're already getting up late of evening, but also our staff, I don't know what time normal gets off. I don't think anybody gets off at a normal time anymore, but this would be closer to, maybe we can get them home quicker.
If we could, we could always change it back. My only concern is parents that may want to attend the meeting, or like when we have students, they come and either perform in front of the board, or.
And then Mr. Chairman can work those out if they need to come later. You know what I mean? After.
Give the flexibility to the chairman and the director to do that.
Well, we can place them at a different time in that meeting. You know what I'm saying? If the kids can't come till 6, we could do some of our meeting before they get there. Is that okay?
That's fine with me. I just want to I know some parents work different schedules,
Right.
and sometimes they may not be able to be here at 5:30.
Yes, sir.
And, if we have a need for them to speak, or they want to see their child, or some just like to attend the meetings, which I don't blame them to stay involved. I want to make sure they have that option. I
Yes,
know
sir.
they can watch it online, but still,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Master, do you have anything?
Yeah, just clarification, you said no committee meetings, are you talking about for that day?
Well, yes, sir. We're going to try the workshop. This will provide us being able to legally have a workshop, prior to our board meeting. Instead of having our committee meetings, I don't know.
It'll be a workshop.
You know what I'm saying? So this adds that language in there. It doesn't mean we can't have a meeting before 5:30. It just means our regular board meeting has to be at 5:30. We can always have something leading up to that if we so choose. But this just allows us to have a workshop, and it doesn't handcuff us to have our regular board meeting at 6:30.
Mr. Irvin?
The workshop will not have no votes,
No, sir, it's a workshop.
and the 5:30, I can swallow that in the wintertime, but it's pretty tough in the summer. So
Yes.
if you have,
We won't take no motions, but that's where our action items will come from, is for that workshop. It'll be an open meeting, but we're calling it a workshop. We won't have anything that we vote on and take action on that night, but it's where we'll come up with motions and things that we will be bringing to the regular board meeting at 5:30 for
So
action.
athletics will still bring something if they need to, and the policy will still bring something if they need to, but do it together one time instead of having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday before the meeting. Does that make sense?
So clarification, if I need an athletic committee meeting, Whitney needs the facilities, and Mitch needs a finance, we combine all that into one workshop.
Just do it all one night. one evening, do it all at once instead of having, like this week we was here Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
My
Get
only,
together more.
I guess my only comment on that, just like for athletics, we went over a lot of stuff. And I guess,
It took longer than any 30 minutes that you're saying it's only gonna take in this work.
Yeah.
They don't have to, that's up to whoever's the chair of the
I
committee.
mean, you said the other day that it would take 30 minutes per person, that you was gonna cut it off. There's other issues, and if we can't get them all talked
We
about,
can stay here all night if y'all want.
well, I mean, that's, whatever happens, it's gonna happen.
Will that also include outside people, like I know on athletics, you have other people like principals and stuff, they'll
Maybe.
still be coming in
Yeah.
just during their section or whatever,
We can stay
Yeah, I
in for
think
as long as.
that's an open meeting. I mean, anybody, everybody
Yeah.
can run it.
or stay for the whole thing?
And that's pretty much what I was gonna ask, so we have a segment where we allow parents to come to speak during that time if we're dealing with an issue?
I
Or
don't
you
think
do that
that-
at the general meeting? Just-
Yeah, I don't think we're really changing the concept of he'll still be over facilities, he'll still be over athletics. We just have it together one
Oh,
night.
no, I'm for it.
And that's what a lot of other systems, Mr. Gannon's actually worked on some stuff, Jennifer's worked on some stuff, that's what most everybody else does.
Oh, yeah.
Is that-
I even looked at
is that
Bristol.
workshop gonna be a set day, like on Mondays
That's what I'd recommend,
or Tuesdays? I mean,
and it ain't gonna fit everybody's schedule, we're just gonna have to pick one and go.
as long as we know, I just,
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, I would pick Tuesday, and every Tuesday we have a workshop.
Yeah, that's fine.
And even check, I think Mr. Fleener made a good point, and do it the week before the meeting.
That way
that
we
if
got
there's
5
action-
days.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, 5 days.
But are you gonna have time, or make allowances for parents to speak at one or both if they have to?
I'm not gonna be up, just whoever's over the committee.
so you're talking about the chair will
Still run. our
entertain
portion.
whatever they want.
Yeah, that's what I thought, 'cause that,
Well, I think that's what we were talking about, but I think we were trying to time it so somebody didn't have 2 hours, an hour, and you know what I'm saying? Let's try to go ahead and have it timed. But a lot of the information, like in athletics and facilities both, we can share beforehand and already be up to date on that.
Yeah, but I'd like clarification if we're gonna be able to speak at the workshop or meeting or both before we, and I'm for this, trust me, but I do want to make sure that we,
yeah. No,
Allow
I mean,
for
as
something.
far as I'm concerned, it'll be just like yesterday, Mike had a coach and a parent, and they all spoke, so I mean, I don't think we're saying they can still speak, it's just, we'll try not to
Will,
drag
will,
it out
will
for
the
an
chair
hour.
determine if it's an action item or not?
I would think, that's what we've been doing, right?
Well, we've been doing it by vote,
And you still have your committee.
but we can't vote. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
If there's something comes up that I don't agree with, but the majority will, I feel like we need to, my
We're not
committee
gonna
needs to
take
vote
action on it, though. We're just gonna take a vote to put it on, and we'll still do that.
as an action,
Yes,
right?
as action item. We will not take a vote to actually pass everything.
No.
It would
The
still
only
have to
people that
come
would
from the
vote
full
would be
board.
those members that are on that actual committee during that time.
Okay.
I
Which is
think it's,
basically what we're already doing.
Yeah, but I just,
We just wanna do it.
and I
all
agree
together
with
one
you,
time.
but I just want clarification,
Yeah.
you know, who brings, you know, do we, I guess my only biggest question was, you know, do we vote or we don't vote?
I think you vote, but we can't take board action.
it's gonna vote
Right,
to
we
make
never have
action.
been able to in a committee, that's
Right.
bring back.
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman's got, like you said, Ms. Buchanan and you've got some action items, guidelines, and I guess you'll go over those
Yeah.
and send those out to the
I was
board.
hoping when
That's
she
kind of
got
what-
back,
yeah.
or maybe we can email. Jennifer, did you gonna say something too?
I was just gonna say, I think one of the key phrases in here that it's agenda setting workshop. So that's in this new, on the new layout of the agenda like we have tonight, we have the action items. So let's say from the workshop, we have like the athletics committee and approving, or facilities approving a road. Okay, so that's gonna be listed as approving or move for approval of road at David Crockett High School. So when you come down to that action item on the agenda, bam, that's all you're doing.
Well, I don't have to sit and talk about it forever. We already,
Because you read it in the
It's there.
report.
well,
And
yeah,
like,
it's in the report, and if you wanna be here, you're here.
And if no if the committee doesn't have any action, it'll be up there at consent agenda where it was like tonight, and you're just approving the report, done, it's cut out.
Mitch, do you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, it's a policy change, I'm good with it, I'd like to vote on it.
Do it. Anybody else?
Mr. Riddle might have had a comment.
We've kind of beat it to death here, but I was just gonna say, we're just looking to streamline our meetings, is what that's for. Combine and streamline our efforts instead of spreading it out like this is our 5th meeting for a lot of us this week. So if we combine that, that would get us down to 2.
Yes,
And we'd get a lot done and a lot set as far as our agenda for the meeting and everything, and kind of get it hashed out. When we get to our actual meeting, it'd be faster, more business-like. So I think that's what we're trying to get to.
Absolutely.
What time is the workshop?
Start at 5. It's when they usually start at 4 or 5. Start at 5.
Well, they usually start at 4. So.
Yeah, start at 4. That's what we usually do. Now, if it does take 3 hours, you're out of here by 7 o'clock. So, anything else? We have a motion to accept.
First and second final reading.
First and second final reading.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Riddle.
You already have a second.
Yeah, I think Mr.
Yeah.
Meredith's
somebody
already.
All right, my fault.
Ready to roll.
Okay, roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dillinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
The reason I voted no is it's 5:30 is too early for the regular board meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but that's how.
All right, Mr. Fleener.
Mr. Chairman, 5.6101 has some language I think that Dr. Flannery and Mr. Hale had discussed, and maybe Mr. Bennett's got some side notes on that as well, but
I didn't see anything in green on mine. So
There's nothing modified right now on this. This is a special situation that's developed that we need guidance on from you tonight. So I've got some documents I'm going to pass out to you, and I'll explain what's going on and what this is. So this developed just within the past week, actually, and Brian, we'll stand right here. So this involves our ROTC staff, and so there's their pay. So what you have is the language of what's been going on, or how one component of their pay has worked. For at least back through 1997, we think, probably back through the 80s. But there was a question that one of the ROTC staff had. They were questioning their pay. And this is just something that one of my staff, before I was here, one of my staff that came in 5 years ago, the person that preceded me two positions back, did this formula for this component of their pay and passed it on to one of my staff that works for me now. It's never been an issue, so it's just been one of those things that's never came up. So I never had a reason to look at the details of this until this last week when one of the ROTC personnel raised a question about this component of their pay. So I dug into the details, and what I have found before we get into what this is neither myself nor Dr. Flannery knows of any, nor can we find any documentation where this component of their pay has ever been approved by any previous board. Therefore, since I now know about it, I can't continue doing this unless you tell me tonight that you approve it. So I've got to tell you and explain what this is, and the verbiage on the front tells you what's been going on and how it's been calculated, And then you've got, I need you to tell me tonight, if you want me to, you'll have to vote to either tell me to continue this and add it to a policy, or not, or at least just have board action approving this. So the second page, probably good if you go to the second page right now. And I'm going to explain the component of this. So the ROTC personnel, there's 4 of them in the system that run the program. They're paid completely different on a different pay scale than the teachers. They're retired military. The military actually funds 50% of their gross pay. So the way it works, and we have Army and then Navy on our programs here, is we get a letter from the military that tells us what the pay rate is, the minimum pay we have to pay the ROTC personnel, these 4. Now, on the military's formula, I'm quite sure they weigh the educational experience and the years of experience that those ROTC personnel has. That goes into the 4th column from the left that says annual military salary. That is, for the 4 personnel we have now, that is their minimum salary they're required to make each year. The military funds 50% of that. So the system doesn't pay that much, but they're required to get that. We're required to pay 50% of that. This will be confusing, by the way. This is, even Mr. Bennett, when I went through it, he said it's one of the most confusing things he's ever seen. And it took me a few days to really wrap my head around this when I wanted to fully understand the whole thing. So I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. So we have the minimum salary the military says these individuals make. That next column that's labeled WCDE salary expense, that's true on the gross pay, but that could probably more accurately be labeled as military supplement, which is 50% of that gross salary that you see to the left. Now, what we're getting to, none of that's in question. What we're getting to next is the column that says annual adjustment. So, what I've been able to verify is that minimum back to 1997 this has happened. We think it's predated that maybe back to the 80s. But there is something called an annual adjustment that the ROTC personnel would get each year. Now, from information I've gathered, what we think, none of this is in writing is the problem. What we think this developed from is before the military personnel are retired, they get their annual military pay, but they also, as part of the military, get what's called a cost of living adjustment. It's not labeled that, it's got another complicated name that they call it, but to keep it simple, it's a cost of living adjustment that they would get that would be tax-free, that they would get in addition to the military salary. So we believe that the reason this annual adjustment was developed was to compensate for that component of their pay they no longer get because they're no longer active military. That's what we think's happened. Now, these amounts that you see are all different, obviously. This is where it's probably going to get a little more confusing. Just looking back at the formula that was passed to my staff member when she came in 5 years ago, is there was a point on the certified teacher pay scale that was measured as a benchmark, 10 years experience. So, and we can pull the certified teacher scale up here if we need to, but that's online. And the 10-year mark was picked as a benchmark. I can't tell you why that was done. I just know it was. And then on the teacher scale, you'll have a bachelor's degree level, master's degree level, or doctorate degree level. So based on the education level, the ROTC personnel, you went to that column for the education. You went down to the 10-year mark as a benchmark. Now, what I want to say is their years of experience in the military or teaching has nothing to do with this. This is just the benchmark that was used. It was used as a measuring point for each year if the board gives a 2% raise, for example. Every box on that teacher scale goes up by 2%. So the 10-year experience level, let's just say this person had a bachelor's degree level. You go to the bachelor's education column, you go to the 10-year experience, that box would go up by 2%. So you get the 2% difference, whatever that dollar amount is. They took 50% of that and added it to this annual adjustment, and it built each year going forward. The reason 50% was taken, we believe, is because the military pays 50% of their gross pay. That's what we believe happened. That's how it worked every year other than year one. And this is where it will get a little more complicated for you in what was done. Is it seems that that 10-year benchmark was used when someone came in year one, and the annual salary was taken out of that box. It was divided by 10 because the teacher salary scale set up to be a 10-month contract, although most teachers get paid over 12 months. So you divide that annual salary by 10, whatever that dollar amount is, let's say it's $40,000, you divide it by 10, that's $4,000. Then for year one, for the annual adjustment, that $4,000 was divided out over 12 checks. So they started in this case with an annual adjustment of $4,000 in addition to the minimum military pay. The next year, that process I just described where that same benchmark's used and you take half of whatever the increase was, is added to that $4,000 and it goes like that each year forward. That's what's been done minimum for 23 years, we think probably back into the 80s. The problem is, since I've discovered this, I don't have any approval from the board to do this. So since it's been discovered, I now have to have approval from you to continue doing it if that's what you choose for me to do. If you continue to do it, the verbiage on page 1 is the best of my abilities describing what I just said to you. So Dr. Flannery and I talked about putting it in policy. I think Attorney Bennett, you said it could or could not go in policy. You just need a board approval either way. Mine and Dr. Flannery's thought was we need something in writing so that 10 years from now, if this comes up again and none of us are here, you know, we thought if it's in policy, you know, at least it would be there or something, you know, there has to be something. So it is your decision as a board to tell me to continue to do this or to modify it or whatever you decide tonight. So I can't continue it though without board approval.
Mr. Hammond's got a question.
Okay, I don't have a problem with putting it in writing. I do have a question. You're saying annual adjustment. Are you saying we adjust their salaries right now?
No. This is what they're already getting.
Okay.
So this annual adjustment is spread out, is divided by 12 basically, whatever that is. So it will never go down. It will only increase, or if the board gives no pay increase a year, as that's happened before, then it stays the same for the next year. But whatever the increase is, let's say 2% is an increase, they basically would get 1% of that benchmark that they're using on the teacher scale added to that amount, and it just continues to carry forward. On their pay, they'll have their regular salary line item, which is under the annual military salary column. That's their regular pay, but there's a separate line item broken down in skyward that says adjustment, and it is whatever that annual adjustment is divided by 12 checks. Now in the old bridge system, the reason I couldn't track it really in that is it wasn't broken down. When you go back before January of 2016, that pay record is not broken down. What we think they did is they added the two together for one amount and just went with it, and you couldn't see it.
And I think, you know, I'd give 10% raise each year, but I would want their percentage to be aligned with our teachers, because essentially that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they do a great job, don't get me wrong. I want to keep everybody on the same percentage level as much as we can.
And what you have to realize is the military salary, they get a pay raise there.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
not.
separate.
And they deserve it. I'm just saying as far as our.
Yeah. So I believe the reason that it was at 50% of whatever the raise was is because we're responsible for 50% of their pay. The military pays the other 50%. Now, we cover the fixed costs. The military does not cover the fixed costs. So those percentages out on that far column is what we really cover. Like for example, employee 1, we actually cover 58%, and it at 61, 63, and 61 when you consider the fixed costs in there.
Flanner's got something.
If you don't care, let's digest this and put 5.6101 on our workshop under finance. That's coming up here in the end of November. And let's digest this just a little bit more, because I've got some more questions, but I don't really know exactly what those questions are.
So what I would need,
it's gonna take me a while.
what I will need from you tonight is at least a motion to say continue as is until you review or something, because I'm technically in a legal sense, not even supposed to allow this to go on a paycheck without board
I'll
approval.
make a motion to continue.
You got a
Second.
motion to continue as is,
Second.
second.
Well, for the next pay period.
Yeah, until you review it again, is what I'm saying. At least for now, it allows me to continue as is
Well, I
until
get
you
that,
meet
but
and
if
review it
we
again.
make that, then it's good. We're
Okay,
we're still
I'll make
going,
it-
we're not gonna.
Until this board reviews this policy and makes any revision.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That gives me legal coverage to continue at least as is until
Well,
you as
you
a
and
board.
kids
have
have
a change.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, any
Well-
more discussion?
Can we add that it comes up in the board, in the workshop, so it does have a ending period? It comes up in the, can you amend your, or will you restate your motion to where you add that?
Well,
Yeah.
I said revision or to revise, if you want to pick a date, if it's going to be the 19th or the 23rd, I'll,
Say the next workshop.
The next workshop, that way the next board meeting will approve. If that's,
Okay, so
can we
so
just
next
leave that
workshop.
open-ended?
I'll just say
Yeah.
next.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. Does that conclude, Mr. Fleener, all of the policies that you have to discuss tonight?
I can't think of any more unless you want to pull the policy manual out and we'll
No,
talk
I
about it.
think we're good.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I guess we can let him go, can we?
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
My pleasure, don't need anything from y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, now, I feel confident we can move to the athletics committee under action items. Mr. Masters.
I make a motion, we accept the report that's in BOE Connect.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger? Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 action items. First one, in our committee meeting, I make this in form of a motion. Mr. Riddle moved that Dane Boone and David Crockett operate at 1/3 capacity for winter sports.
Second, can you give us those numbers again, if you don't mind, sir? Give us the,
Memory serves me right, Daniel Boone's capacity is 1,800. Crockett is 1,900. I think Josh said 650 total. And I think Danny said 550 total at any point in time in the gym.
Mike, are these TSSAA recommendations?
Yes.
That's
That's
what
they recommend 1/3 capacity.
1/3, okay.
And I would also like to state that I think if, and I've talked to both ADs, it's going to be hard for them to monitor protocol. And I think as a board, if it gets out of hand, my recommendation is we shut it down to players only. I don't want to cut their season off, but if they can't, if the ones in the stands cannot follow our protocol, then we shut the door.
All right, any more discussion on that?
so we'll be in between 5 and 550 at Daniel Boone. We'll be at 636 at Crockett. That'll be all the tickets we can sell.
Well, I mean, Mike, does that, you said tickets, does that include athletes? Or
Yes,
is that,
far as I know, yes.
After athletes.
Is it after?
You
Okay.
won't sell that many tickets?
No, we actually will sell that many tickets.
Yeah.
The way I understood it was after the athletes. This is actually tickets to get in, not counting the
That's
athletes and the
gate-
coaches.
That's
Gate
extra
receipts.
go into the school.
Okay, so you gotta add the athletes there to get to what your total number in the gym's gonna be.
Yeah.
And cheerleaders and everything else. Okay.
And just FYI, the high school cheerleaders will not be traveling to away games.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
All right, the other one I got, I make this in form of a motion. On the middle school level, we ask that cheerleaders and basketball players will be allowed 2 tickets per student athlete in the stands to view the middle school games.
Second.
Any discussion?
Got a question on that, please.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to make it as simple as possible to where they could print off the name of the player, and they'd have 2 tickets with that name of the player. There'd be a check sheet, that way it goes quick to get in the ball games, as quick as we can. We can maybe have Boone or Crockett's printing, do something to that nature to get that done. I'd also like to amend that motion, if you don't care, Mr. Chairman.
Basketball players.
I mean about the cheerleaders cheering away. Thought it was in the same thing.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion to add that Boone Ballers and Pioneer Shooters would also they would go by the same guidelines as the middle school. They would have 2 tickets per athlete. An athlete includes cheerleaders and players. That would be what an athlete would entail, the definition.
Okay, so we got a motion, amended motion for Boone Ballers, Pioneer Shooters, same guidelines
As the middle school.
middle schools.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any discussion on that?
I have a question,
Did you get a-
procedural question. Are you saying therefore that Boone Ballers and Pioneer Shooters will be allowed to use the facilities during this time of virtual instruction?
Yes, sir, just like the middle school would. They'd follow under the same guidelines.
Okay, that will be a complete reversal of what they're under right now. Is that the board's intent?
Yeah.
If this passes, it would be.
Okay, roll call vote,
Did you get a
Jennifer.
second on that amendment?
Mr.
I did.
Dave, Mr. Hammond, yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. Now, we need to vote on the motion
Mhm.
As amended.
As amended.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And I also want to make clarification of that, and I will put it in the motion if need be. The middle school cheerleaders will be able to cheer away games within the county.
Mr. Master,
Yes.
why are we not allowing the high school cheerleaders?
That was a conference decision.
That was a conference
Oh, so it's
decision from,
conference.
right.
Okay, thank
And
you.
what I'm asking about the middle school cheerleaders is they travel away, but only in our county schools.
Okay.
I'll
thank you.
second that.
Motion second, any more discussion? Roll call vote, Jennifer?
Second, please. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
I make this in form of a motion. Daniel Boone High School and David Crockett High School, for the board to reimburse their expense of hotel and meals accrued for each school for their travel to the state competition for the cross-country teams.
Second.
Any discussion?
And the reason we don't have a number for those that weren't there is it was like 1,900 for Daniel Boone, but Crockett did not have their numbers, or 1,200, 1,400, something like that. So it's
It's not the same, it won't be the same amount
because they
per
didn't have
school.
both teams go from Crockett.
Okay,
So it is
roll call
minimum.
vote?
Do we need to say where it needs to come from for Mr. Hale? Can we use that board travel, any PD travel, if there's any money left on that?
The allocation that athletics normally gets, what line does that come from?
I can look it up. They've got 65,000 in that line, and there's still money left. But if I remember right, in athletics, we're only talking $2,500.
$2,700, yeah.
That's
Less-
not a problem.
Less than
Yeah.
3. All right, good.
Yes, sir.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Would like to, Mr. Chairman, are you done on your motions?
No, I got one more.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to throw this out, and if I need to put it in motion, I will. Mr. Kite David Crockett did announce that they would be having the Hardee's Classic. And, I mean, I don't have a problem with that as long as he meets the criteria of 650 or 636 or less at any given point in time of the tournament. Now, if we need to make that a motion, I will, or if the board just wants to, I mean, I don't know. I just don't want, I don't want more in there than 1/3.
Well, so question on that, is the Hardee's Classic, is that something we put on, or is that just something that someone else uses our facility?
No, we host that tournament.
Okay. And that's it is our responsibility.
Yes.
Yes, and I'd also like to tack on to that, at least an expectation when boom ballers and pioneer shooters play, that there'd be a period of time between games to where the people would leave. That way we don't never go above capacity of 2 people per student athlete. That way if they go out, you know, you'll never get more than the capacity needs to be, 2 people per student athlete. So I don't know if that needs to be a motion, but it's kind of the same deal.
Right.
As far as the tournament goes. A 1 game pass I don't know how they need to do it, but they need to get it to where every team has an opportunity, but they can't just hold somebody else that's got a student athlete by being in there.
I say you and your staff can handle delivering that message.
We have somebody there to lock the doors, but, I mean, it's up to the leadership of boom ballers and shooters to.
Yeah, I mean, can we send a letter out to whoever's over those
I
organizations?
talked to them, certainly had a face-to-face meeting, and I'm satisfied that they have a plan in place for social distancing and for cleanliness and so forth, so I think they're serious about keeping the people safe.
Yeah.
What about the Classic? Will that hurt?
That's, and I mean, I'll put it in the motion if need be, or if it needs to be in the minutes, or, I don't know, it's to this
I
board.
guarantee you we're not gonna go over.
Well, the thing about that is you can make the motion or put it in the minutes, and
I mean,
that's up to our staff to make sure they know what to do, so
Right.
it's up to you guys.
But I think we also need to put in there, if it's not followed, then what is the repercussion? Do we shut it down? I mean, I don't know. I think we've got to get serious about attendance.
I think it's going to be pretty hard because
I do too.
people comes, Boone, Crockett, both. You got your fans of the high schools and stuff that goes and sits and watches the ball games, and I'm one of them. I like to go over and watch 3 or 4 ball games and see. And, you know, I'd hate to know that I'm sitting in there watching a ball game and somebody's kid parents is out there and he can't get in because we got too many people in there. So.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
So what if they managed it in sessions, like the Hardee's, like game sessions? So this game, they have that many people come in. Before the next game, they empty the gym, let the next set come in. It extends your time a little bit, but it helps them control the crowd and the numbers. Exit them out one way, bring them in the other, and just make sure you empty after each
Probably
session.
the only way to do it.
Right.
When is the Hardee's Classic?
I don't know,
I
Mary
mean, have
Beth.
we got time
It's
to
over Thanksgiving, Mary
have
Beth.
them present a protocol to give us or whatever?
We don't have another meeting.
We don't have another athletic meeting. That's the reason why I wanted to bring it up for full board, just so we have some kind of directive.
Mr. Meredith.
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of the athletics, I mean, number one, is really there for the student
Correct.
athletes, okay, to compete and whatnot. Second, it's there, you know, for their parents to participate. It's really not an entertainment. In this environment, we shouldn't be in the business of creating entertainment for the broad population of Washington County. So, you know, I don't know if there's any discussion about, you know, limiting tickets to, you know, 2 or 4 per player or something like that, so they can get their family in, and then whatever is left would be, you know, for Mr. Irwin or Mr. Flater or myself or whoever.
Chad?
Yeah, I know, Mr. Masters probably knows this as good as anybody, but I know at that night they said that on a visit, you know, a game that was coming to Boone or Crockett, they would send the visiting team 150 tickets. Each visiting team, 150 tickets. So, and if they didn't sell their 150, they come back to the school and the school could sell them. So, I think it needs to be managed somehow, whether it needs to be a motion or not, but I'd like to see everybody get to see their child, but, you know, that way, like Keith said, he don't want to be sitting in there and taking the room for somebody's parent to be able to come in there and watch your child play. So I'd like to see it done administrative, because I don't know what kind of motion you're going to make. It's going to probably be as complicated as this ROTC deal.
And one thing I can say, both high schools, with the approval of our CFO, they will be using GoFan as ticket sales, which is all electronic, so they can monitor the number of tickets sold. To my knowledge, there will be tickets at the gate if there's any left.
Anybody else?
So, I mean,
It's up to you all. You
I don't
got
know how
something,
you
throw it
gonna
out
say it.
there. If you
I
don't,
don't
we're
either.
moving on.
I think as long as it's in the minutes and it's publicly known, I think, to me, that's, I'm good with that. And the only other thing I got is if Mr. Hale will kindly inform us on the ticket split on the Musket Bowl,
So,
please.
so there's a few refunds that they processed because, well, won't get into the details, but there was a promise made to refund some, which we're not going to be doing that going forward, and that's been made clear. If you buy a ticket online, you're not getting a refund unless the game's canceled. So there's a few of those that were processed, but the tickets are roughly around, before the refunds, around 2,150 that were sold. So the board has you said any ticket, it was a $10 ticket, so that $3 amount from 7 to 10 was supposed to be split, where Boone gets basically $1.50 a ticket. That's going to be just over $3,200 approximately. That money will be transferred very soon. They're waiting on the funds to come in from GoFan to Crockett. I told Crockett definitely they could wait until they get that. And then I have the documentation that's been sent to me on the ticket reconciliations and the tickets that were sold on GoFan. So the money should be being transferred to Boone, I would imagine, next week. And with that, all of the ticket reconciliation documentation from GoFan, the tickets that were sold in actual cash at the school. There were a few tickets sold for cash the night of the game. So all of that documentation is going to be together. And then when that check's transferred to Boone, both schools will have all documentation for auditing purposes as well. Since it's an odd situation, auditors will definitely look at the details on that, since one school is transferring money to another school. So that's where we stand. We're, as of yesterday, that money had not arrived from GoFan. And the amount, let's see if I can click on the right tab here, give me just a moment. The amount from GoFan, I want to say, was about $18,000. Here it is. Yeah, from GoFan, the electronic tickets were 1,816 tickets. So yeah, 18,160, which accounted for about
1,800. 1,800, right?
1,816 tickets on GoFan. And then as far as they sold tickets at the school leading up to the game, and then tickets the night of the game. total tickets were about, actual tickets sold was 334. And then it was only a handful of refunds that I was made aware of as of yesterday.
Well, wait a minute, I'll be just, you initially said that we sold 2,150 tickets.
That's a total number.
That's about 18, 16.
Right, but then you just said, how many did you say, 334 or 3,334?
No, 334, which would give you 2150.
334.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, if you add those two together. Some people just aren't good at math.
Yeah, just crawl.
Perfect. That adds up, Brad.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, facilities, Mr. Riddle.
All right, sir. At the facilities committee meeting yesterday, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the report, which is on BOE Connect.
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call vote, Jim.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Okay, I only have one action item. We had a visitor from the Davy Crockett baseball program, Dan Wheely. He came before the committee and gave us an update on the baseball athletic facility. He came and proposed that they had been talking with Johnny Deakins, the Washington County Highway Superintendent, to help improve their road to the facility. What that consisted of was gravel and grading and putting in a tile to help with the drainage of that. They did get some materials donated for that project, and they still have part of that as far as the gravel for the parking lot and things. So that'll help some with the cost of the project. But we do need board approval for the highway department to do their portion of this. So that would be grading the road and putting gravel down, and again, putting a tile for drainage on that. We had Mr. Masters made a motion, and that was seconded by Mr. Fleener, and I'd like to put that before the board motion.
Second.
Where is this?
Crockett.
It's a David Crockett for their baseball facility.
Thank you.
All right, any more discussion?
The cost would be $3,000 on that. And they're asking for the board to fund that.
But, Mr. Riddle, I'm thinking though, we may not have to spend the $3,000. We may have to, we'd like for them to actually work with the county. But we can purchase a culvert according to Mr. Patrick. And he also said that the Crockett boy said that, Mr. Wheatley said that they had the
Gravel.
60 tons or whatever of gravel still, and we have our own dump truck, so we may be able to get, I don't know that we're held to the $3,000.
Okay.
With that being, is that not what you understood?
What I understood was the highway department agreed to do their portion of the project for $3,000. And they were going to utilize the existing materials they had left as part of that to help keep the costs down.
Okay. I got mixed up there, but that's probably exactly right.
Anybody else? Okay, roll call vote, Mr.
Did you put an amount in this, or?
I think we need to let Mr. Flannery talk to Johnny and let him go down there and look at it and see what it.
Was it 3,000?
And-
We have had conversations and emails back and forth.
And, I mean, do you have a figure?
No, the first time I heard $3,000 about this meeting.
Well, I believe we need to let Mr. Flannery find out what it's gonna cost. I mean, is that what Johnny's gonna? He told them $3,000, so, you know, we need to make sure it's $3,000. I don't wanna come up and say it's $6,000 or $8,000.
Well, I'll say something. The motion's for $3,000. If it's more than that, they're gonna have to come back to us, won't they?
I would think so.
Okay.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, just put a cap of 3,000 on it, and early when you talk.
Not to exceed 3.
Yeah. I don't know when he's doing it.
No, they didn't say.
Mary Beth, did you want to say something? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, let's roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dillinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. I mean,
I'm sorry.
we moved on.
No. Let's put it in reverse just a minute. There's two things I'd like to add on this, if you don't mind, and they're not action items, but we talked about in the finance, about the portables that we have at the different schools. And I'd like for it to come back to finance and facilities. Of course, we're going to have the workshop on the same night, so it shouldn't be a problem. But I would like for Dr. Flannery, if you would add the portables and you get some more information on them, the ages of them, and also how much it's costing to keep those up. And with the decline in enrollment that we've had over the years, I really want to see us really have to justify whether we're going to keep these portables or not, because of the rising maintenance cost on those.
We just give you a bunch of work to do.
Okay.
We gotta look back through minutes, because who knows? Yeah,
Well,
we'll find
I mean, can Mr. Patrick not, you can just make sure your staff gets that together, if you don't mind?
We'll have to look at the minutes. I mean, nobody will have a memory of it.
Okay.
The board will have taken action at some point to build them, but I know that they're decades old.
Okay.
I know we talked about this before
Last
our
year.
last election, and we got shot down over COVID, but I still think we need to look at it.
Yeah, definitely, especially since the new year, but also too, gray bleachers. We talked about them. It's not in the minutes, and I think we just briefly touched on it, we moved on. But I don't think we ever took action to get the new bleachers at Gray, but we never have, I just don't want to let another month go by until we find out how much they are. Get us 3 bids if you don't mind on that. Do we need to put that action in a motion?
We've got a good price on the gray bleachers. You sent me to HEW for money and shut us down. But we've got a real accurate number on the gray bleachers.
He couldn't give us, and it may just been because he didn't have the paperwork with him in the facilities committee.
It's been it, because he and I, we've looked at it.
I thought he said it was 100,000.
He said 105, but I thought there was some questions in that with the athletics.
Well, the athletics part was, I think both Boone and Crockett's lower section bleachers is inoperative.
Right.
And
They're getting us numbers and specs and
Right,
all
that's
that.
the reason why I
We'll
didn't bring
back
that
to
up,
the Committee
but-
meeting, and we're gonna talk about it.
Mr. Day.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to get back to the portables with justify. I'd also like to include principals in on that too, rather than just Mr. Patrick. Let them, what they could do, if they could shift to other, like you said, if there's this decreasing population, like empty classrooms that could be utilized, but I'd like to get them in on it too.
That'd be great.
they could social distance with those too.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
for time's sake, if we could go ahead and figure a price on if we had to move them, sell them, demolish them, whatever, if we could get Mr. Patrick to look at that, that way we wouldn't have to discuss it and then come back for another meeting for more information.
Do you remember when we got rid of the portable, it was,
Yes,
did we end up having to pay somebody to tear it down?
I thought
Yeah.
did we pay them? I thought they took it for the,
It seemed like we tried to sell it, and then we tried to give it away, and I swear I believe the board ended up having to pay somebody to take it down.
well,
I
if we
think
could
we
get a
did
price on
pay to
that.
tear them down. I ain't for sure, but I do think.
Well, I'm
you're-
not,
Yeah.
we'll
But-
find out.
You know, some schools is using the portables for storage. And if they're using them for storage, I don't wanna mess with them.
Well, that's the reason why I got Mary Beth's
Yeah.
idea, let the principals tell us if they need them or not.
There's 9 portables in use right now. One school is using half of one just for storage. The others are being used for students' activities.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what Lamar's got their after-school care or something, don't they
Gray
do?
does too, after school.
And, you know, that's a use, and I can't,
Well, let's get some information and find out, because, I mean, there was some real cost that somebody threw out last year. I mean, it was high dollar keeping those things up. And, I mean, we need to be cognizant of that fact as well. So we just need to get some more information to make sure it doesn't die, so. But you don't need me to make, I mean, you can get us a bid on the gray bleachers for the workshop or whatever, correct?
And I declare, I believe we've got a hard number on grade, the Boone and Crockett, it's still a working.
Okay.
seemed to me like Philip said that the ones at Gray, it was by bid, it's the one they was using to, getting the price from, I think is what it was. Or
So
buy
this
board,
report
buy whatever.
includes safety inspection on the buildings, is that what?
Sir?
It's going to include a safety inspection, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be an updated, you know, those are there since, I guess, they built the original bleachers at Gray.
no, I'm talking about the buildings that we're utilizing.
Oh, the pods?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We did bring up, Mr. Flannery, the issues at Boone's Creek, the new school. Have you heard anything as far as what's going on?
Let me find it, I've got an email, I can find it, from the construction coordinator. Here we go, Tommy Burleson. This is from Tommy. It's a comment from Carl Gutschall, which is one of the architects, and it says, in my opinion, environment is trending in the right direction. We need time to see moisture that is in the slab come out, AKA drying it out, in quotes, getting control of the outdoor via the dehumidification, is paramount to that objective. Also, cycling and running the dehumidification equipment in the process. My opinion is partly based on my general observation that indoor humidity was tracking with the outside humidity. Recent adjustments and set points and damper settings has helped a lot in most cases. We need to periodically check the in-situ probes in the slab for moisture content. It will take a while for slab to dry out unless moisture is coming from elsewhere. Again, I believe we are headed in the right direction.
There was also an action item about the lockers on there, and he said he was gonna get with you and the company that done that and get back to us on a Friday update or whatever, correct? You're aware of that? I forgot about that.
I'm sorry, I was reading another message from Tommy. Please.
No, the lockers situation where they couldn't get the master codes and all that, they were talking to the manufacturer about that, and he said he was gonna let you know where that stood.
He did, and he just said what you said, they're checking with the manufacturer.
Okay, will you let us know as soon as you find out about that, sir?
It'll be in the next report I send out, as soon as I have that date.
Thank you.
Got something else?
Yeah, since we're on facilities, Mr. Riddle, and I see it in your report, and I heard it when we had one of the parents talking earlier about they didn't see any safety enhancements going on in our schools over the last 8 months since the pandemic hit. And it looks like y'all talked about ionization implementation to some extent. And yes, it may have been in the ESG proposal, which we didn't move forward with under a lot of reasons, but that shouldn't have precluded it from being considered for implementation during this. So was there any discussion about going ahead and moving forward and getting some ionization equipment in these schools to clean the air up, to help with social distancing in the pandemic?
We did briefly discuss that. A question was posed to Mr. Patrick if, you know, that was an option. And he said it would be much easier on the newer facilities than the older ones. So we can look into that and see, you know, the pricing and so forth as to what it would take to do that.
So is he doing that, or is it just, yeah, we could do it, but?
Yeah, he's not doing that because we talked about that those things would possibly be taken care of with that energy conservation program.
Which could be in 2025, but that's okay.
So, I mean, we could take a look at that, certainly.
I think he should. I mean, I think we need to be going full throttle ahead on making sure these buildings are as safe as they can be, as clean. I mean, we're putting kids and staff in there and, you know.
I did talk to a air conditioner manufacturer rep last week and asked him that question. He said they were able to retrofit to most systems, so we could probably follow up on that.
Yeah, Dr. Flannery, I think it'd be a good idea for you to have your staff look into that and bring something back to us.
Is there a motion for it?
I don't not know. I mean, if you need a motion for us to direct you to do everything you need to do to run the school, then I'm scratching my head.
Okay,
I'll put it in the form of a motion. I'd like to know what the stuff would cost. I mean, what it would do and what it benefits and what it don't benefit. So I'll put it in the form of a motion to find out about it.
I'll second it. I mean, I just think
I mean,
the concept of
it's
us
a-
having to put a motion in.
I can understand what Mr. Flannery's saying. It's a money issue. You know, if the mayor's maybe gonna have some extra money, or we go to the county commission and ask for money to put this in, I can't see them turning us down. So it's a good thing, I think.
I think it's a safe thing to do. And I mean, I think you gotta be proactive about what you're doing and try to do something a little bit different.
It's something new, and we can't afford it, but
Anyway.
maybe.
So, I mean, I guess there's a motion in a second, so.
all right, any more discussion? Roll call vote, Jennifer. The motion is, so
For having-
everybody's clear on that.
For Mr. Flannery to check in to the
Cost.
cost of the whatever them
Ionization
Ionization.
ionization units.
And a
Yes.
second by Mr. Meredith. Okay,
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
yes. All right,
I just have one clarification, if you don't care. I misspoke earlier and said that the road project wasn't in there, and that is, the estimated cost wasn't $3,000, but it was I was on the wrong paper, so I'm sorry, Ms. Moore. I should have never doubted you.
okay, Finance Committee.
The information's on BOE Connect. Hope everybody's looked at it. If you have any questions for the Finance Committee or our Chief Financial Officer, Hale, we'll entertain those questions. If not, I'll make a motion to accept the information as presented.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. Okay, action items, that concludes all those. New business,
Oh, you did.
criminal justice CTE. Who is that?
Mr. Flannery asked a quick replacement.
Hello. I was approached by Dr. Flannery about a criminal justice program. So what I did was I did some research. First of all, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Criminal justice is actually under the career cluster of law, public safety, corrections, and security. So the state has devised 16 career clusters, and criminal justice falls under that. I asked for clarification because under that career cluster, there is the criminal justice piece, which is like our police officers, correctional officers. There's a fire management service, and there's also like pre-law, which is lawyers. And I was told that what the interest was for police officers and correctional officers. So I did that research. I pulled labor market data, everything that CTE has to do when we get federal funding. We have to go through our statistics labor board data. So I pulled that for Washington County. I also looked statewide. The data, and
Dr. Flannery and I talked about this, it's like, man, we know that our county, when we talk to our correctional officers, you know, there is a need. But right now, for correctional officers and jailers, there's actually a -6 growth rate in Washington County. For police and sheriff's patrol office, there is a 12% increase, or a 12% growth rate. And then first line supervisors of protection, there is a 9%. So that is part of the labor data. When you look at the top 5 career clusters for Washington County or Northeast Tennessee, that is not on the top 5. When I looked at largest projected growth, it does not meet that criteria. And when I look at highest wages, it does meet the bottom 5. So when I'm looking at all this data, and I have to turn this into the state, when I do my projected budgets, when I do the comprehensive local needs assessment for our area, this would not rank high, this program of study. I had an hour and 15-minute meeting with our core consultant from the state on Tuesday, and she said right now, you know, we are offering the career cluster. She said we looked very good in all the other districts that she looked at and what we hold. One concern that I have, and just as I'm looking forward, and I know that you as a board, you have to decide on future. I just wanted to bring back up, if you remember last year, we lost a health science teacher. Because of losing a health science teacher at Daniel Boone, we lost industry certifications. As a matter of fact, we lost 3. And we know in the medical field how important it is, especially we're in the midst of a pandemic, how important our medical professionals are. So if we're having to choose as we're looking forward as budget, my recommendation is that we get back that health science instructor for multiple reasons. I looked at industry certifications. There are no industry certifications that are Tennessee promoted for criminal justice. But in health science, there are 9. 5 of those are employable industry certifications. What that means is when those students take our programs, they get that industry certification, they leave high school and can get a job. They don't have to have further education. So that's huge. That's in the health science. Also, health science, there are 2 articulation agreements for dual credit with colleges, which means they take that in high school free of charge. They already have college credit. For criminal justice, there are none. So if you're, you know, looking at programs and studies going forward, not that I don't think we should have a criminal justice program, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if we have to choose, we really need to consider what the state is considered highest wage. And if I'll go back to the 5, the most annual openings, health science is on there. Largest projected growth, health science is on there. Highest wages, health science is not on there, however, it is on the projected growth. So, any questions? Yes?
Did we, when you say we lost our health sciences, and Mr. Elder may need to remind me, refresh my memory, but I mean, did we reduce budget numbers for that, or did we just lose a teacher?
That's when she became a CTE director.
That was me.
That was you, okay.
Yes.
So,
remember, I hold a medical degree.
okay, so you moved into the CTA,
Yes.
CTE director position,
Correct.
which I'm assuming was funded. Did we still have a health science teacher?
I didn't cut any teaching salaries out of the budget.
Okay.
So we still have that salary to be hired to do the certification, correct? Can we not find nobody to teach? Is that the problem?
I don't know what happened last
Okay.
year. I mean, you know, I was in a transition, and it could have just been timing. But we did. I taught industry certifications, but I also taught all the prereqs for the other industry certifications. So we lost CNA, we lost medical assistant, and we lost pharmacy tech, which are all employable certifications right out of high school.
And so we need to find your clone or replace them.
Yes, we do. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's in the budget, then we ought to move forward.
Have we put it out there?
Well, we've not yet because we're not posting anything for next year. This will be
Okay.
after next year.
Mr. Plainer, do you have something?
Yes, I know you're surprised.
Wow.
I know what you're saying about the criminal justice, and I understand, and I don't know how that could be true on those numbers when we have such a need in Washington County. Because when we talked at our retreat, we were talking about how we were short some officers, and we were short in the jail big time. I don't know if our fellow officers here tonight could tell us how many they're short in jail, but it's several. And probably some on patrol that were short.
16 short.
And I
Chad,
talked.
this is how that happens.
Yes, ma'am.
What the labor market data does, they look at, an area per capita, and they say, okay, you have so many residents. And they calculate per residence for that region, that's how many you need per this sector.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to us when we're looking, we know that, we need extra jailers, we
Yeah.
need more EMTs, we need a lot in our public service. Just like for education, we would like to have more teachers, but that's how they base that on. We also know for criminal justice, and I know our officers back there can tell you, there's a high burnout rate. They're worked very hard, and it's not that I don't support that at
Right.
all.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see how the career clusters could be, I don't understand that. I mean, when you know the need's been there, it's been there not just overnight. But what you're, and I don't mean to put any words in your mouth, Ms. Fink, but what you're saying is because it's low in those standards when you send it in for the Perkins grant, I guess we won't get any money for that. Is that correct?
Well, we're just evaluated differently. When we look, and I have to talk to my core consultant, like I said, at our meeting, I have to justify what we do.
Right.
So when we're looking at those numbers, she's like, well, why do you have this program? When we look at your data, and I can't just say, well, gosh, we really want some more in our area, which, I do, and if we can do both.
Well, I think we
find
should.
our way.
And I think, I think we have a real need, and we have had for several years for the law enforcement in our area, and plus 911 operators and different things. And especially since we have some around the surrounding counties that actually do have this criminal justice. And especially since we have a lot of misconception over, how our officers, I don't want to say something politically incorrect because that's not me, but I guess we're not going to defund the police in, Washington County, or I don't think we will. So I think we have a real need. I'd like to put something together, and I think the Sheriff's Department, and I don't want to quote nobody for saying that, but the Sheriff's Department has a real desire to get this started as well. So they may help us with funding, to support this. And it sounds like to me, from what I understand, because it is material and things as they look over, but what we're really talking about budget-wise is a person to teach that course.
Yeah, I think it's about, how much is it for a teacher? 80?
If you figure, depending on the experience, fixed costs and all, averages low 70 to 73 range. I'm assuming this would be a teacher with a little more experience, so you could get up to that 75, 80 range with fixed costs.
Well, please, let's keep this to the forefront. Our health, the 3 certifications for health science definitely ought to be in the
Yeah,
forefront.
that was a huge hit for us.
And let's please put that up there towards the top. I mean, I don't even know why we have to discuss the health services because it's already in the budget. I mean, really, the CTE is the only one we need to talk about because it's going to be adding a new position.
Yeah.
So,
And I was trying to find, there's certain certifications that they have to have. And I don't know how difficult it's going to be to fill that position. I think it's an associate's degree, and they have to work 5 years out of the past 8. So, we have to look too, can we find somebody?
Yeah. Well, and their Sheriff's Department may be willing to help out as far as that it goes as well. So let's please put that on our budget wish list for 2021 budget. And their health sciences, I mean, let's try to get somebody in place. Would it be, since we're on the block schedule, could we not go ahead and post that and try to get somebody, but January 1 to start, January 4th?
That would be it.
I mean, if it's already in the budget, I don't know why we would have to approve anything. Dr. Flander, do you see that?
I had to do some horse trading back in budget. I made the board explicitly aware of my plan to bring Crystal in as a full-time supervisor back last spring. And we did have to use money. No, there's not enough money in the 721 or 713 line to bring in a new instructor. It would have to be a budgeted. And it is my plan to bring in a full-time health science instructor for FY20, for the 21-22 school year.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal, or thank you, Ms. Fink.
Anybody else have a question?
Okay, WCEA.
It's been a while since I sat through one of these board meetings. I would like to take just a minute and to address a comment that was made by one of the speakers earlier today. It's a common misconception with the related arts teachers. I am certified teacher. I am and have been awarded nationally, statewide, and by this board. I have 15 years of experience. I have over 200 plus hours added to my degree in an area concentration, which makes me highly qualified. I do not think that it would be in the best interest of myself or my administrators to put me in the position of substituting or as an instructional assistant. Just my 2 cents there. Do I have a time limit?
Depends on when you want to go home.
It might take me a few minutes, but over 5, just to say what I need to. I am Jan Allen. If you don't know, I'm the art teacher at Jonesboro Elementary. I'm here as the Vice President of the Washington County Education Association. WCEA represents the teachers of Washington County, and I'm honored to speak on their behalf tonight. In most cases during this time, Washington County teachers are dealing with many of the same issues. However, several teacher situations are unique to them. So I will speak generally of our accomplishments and our frustrations. And I won't say roadblocks because we always find a way. I would like to personally take just a moment to thank my administrators, Matt Combs and Brandy Mingy, for being the rock that our teachers have leaned on at Jonesboro Elementary. And as you heard earlier, we are the school that rocks. They have given 100% during this time. They have been readily available, responded to any questions or concerns within minutes. They check on our morale. They bring us little perks constantly. One or the other pops in to say hi or observe our Google meetings and provide feedback. So yes, to the question, we are held accountable for what we teach in class. As inspirational speaker in education, Brad Johnson stated, selfless leadership during assessment this year should be summed up in 3 questions to the faculty and staff. How are you? What do you need? And how can I help you be your best? We have that type of leadership at JES. Our administration has stood tall. They need to be acknowledged for their efforts. Thank you, Matt and Brandy. And I know other administrators are doing the same for their faculty and staff. WCEA would also like to thank the board along with the guidance from our director, Dr. Flannery, Kelly Wagner, the supervisor of coordinated school health, Cindy Hayes, director of elementary education, Ashley Keys, director of secondary education, for making the decisions for us to remain full virtual until November the 30th. We know these decisions were not easy, and we appreciate your efforts in keeping us all safe. Washington County has a great team of directors at central office, and we should all listen closely to their recommendations. They are a wealth of knowledge, and thank you for all you do. As a representative of Washington County teachers, I first need to address some teachers' concerns pertaining to the board. Don't kill the messenger. I will be respectful but direct. Most teachers would not speak openly to you as I am, but I'm just too old to worry about it anymore. My jitters are not from my jitters are from public speaking, not from being afraid to let you know their concerns. Your comments and actions as board members are put under a microscope just as the teachers are. Teachers are held accountable for not only our words in school, but our attire, our social media posts, our conduct in public. Washington County board members are held accountable to teachers, parents, and the community. Please be more conscientious of your words and actions. If you are not familiar with how classes and teachers interact, visit our classrooms. Get involved. You're our elected school leaders. We look to you for guidance. You need to know how the day-to-day life in the classroom is conducted in order to make educated decisions on our policy and mandates. Don't let your only visit to school be on school board visit day. As a representative of our teachers, here are some of the current comments and actions that you have made that have made my phone and my email blow up. This is how important your words are to teachers and how indirectly they may affect parents and students' views of teachers. Quote 1, what do teachers do in their after hours? They don't have anything to do after school, do they? Can't they be on call after hours for parents to answer questions? Yes, we do work 24/7, but we are not doctors on call nor realtors. I say that because my mother's profession was a realtor until she was 80s. How do the kindergarten through 3 teachers interact with their students virtually? I've not heard of any interactions. Teachers that work tirelessly trying to make your decisions work do not appreciate this comment. We have failed the first 9 weeks of school. This is very offensive to teachers who did everything they could short of going to the child's home to educate and care for them. And some even did that. Have teachers really failed their students, or is it the situation or the unsafe conditions that we are being asked to teach in that are failing our children? Another concern. As a board, collectively, you voted on a motion to mandate wearing masks. And yet we have board members that refuse to wear masks during these meetings as well as ball games, even when asked to put one on and even when one is provided for them. What kind of example is that setting for our school and our students, the teachers and administrators? Everyone means everyone. That mindset might be very well why we're in the shape we're in right now. The teachers of Washington County have the exact same concerns as parents and their guardians. We are by nature nurturers. Our concerns are to educate our students and provide a safe environment for them to learn. Not only to teach them, but we want our students to be with us in person to create the classroom community, check on their well-being, and know that they're in a safe place. But it's not safe while our number cases are rising. We are unable to staff many of the schools properly due to our quarantine numbers. If teachers are out and subs or instructional assistants are having to cover those classes for 10 to 24 days, what type of education is that child getting? With the pandemic cases, the safety of our students is not certain. That goes against our very nature as those nurturers. This also blurs the line between the safety of our school and home with us. It is affecting the health and well-being of our families. I have been, in fact, quarantined twice and tested twice since we returned in person. With the back and forth of in-person, virtual, hybrid, teachers are stretched to their limits and spend countless hours at home preparing for the classes. You're asking even more of our teachers by wanting them to sacrifice their health and the health of their families. This is with a 1% raise, but a 2% increase in insurance. Teachers are having to weigh the risk, the financial and mental pros and cons of staying in the profession that they love. If parents or guardians, I'd like parents that are listening to know we are following the board's and administration's protocol. We do not make these decisions as teachers. If parents or guardians have concerns about our teaching, they need to voice their concerns first with the teacher. In certain circumstances, that might be the best that that teacher is able to give in that situation at that time. An example, they're already taking care of sick children or elderly at home while trying to learn Google Apps and technology. Instead of immediately criticizing, find out what the problem is. Is it communication? Is it lack of materials? Not responding to the messages? And ask why. Ask first. Don't assume the worst. If that doesn't suffice, then contact the administrator or the director. Are we 100% perfect across the county? No. Are we trying? Definitely. This pandemic has put a spotlight on the inadequacies of our educational system, where the responsibility of food, transportation, and childcare have been placed on our underfunded schools and their employees. It shows the flaws in our educational system as a whole, where priorities have been skewed. I know I'm preaching probably to the choir. Yesterday, from the Tennessee Health Department website, the last 7 days has a daily case rate of 59.9 cases per 100,000. I believe that we set our bar at reopening at 10. I know that's changed. In the last 14-day average, we had 73 new cases per day, with a prior 14-day average being 43.5. To address the 50% of hybrid attendance plan, many teachers tried to teach virtually and in person simultaneously, so they could decrease the amount of Google slide presentations, forms, and videos they were having to make. Is it essentially like teachers are teaching 2 classes rather than 1 with twice the work? And may I say, it's a huge liability if you're doing both, to take your eyes off an in-person student to look at a Chromebook screen. Coupled with tech and internet problems, lack of Chromebooks, students popping in and out of the Google Meets, all while the teacher is in class, then entering grades in Google Apps as well as PowerSchool. You can see where I'm going with that. 50% or hybrid does not work for parents, teachers, or students. It's too inconsistent and stressful for everyone involved. Teachers end up feeling like one or the other of their groups has been slighted. This also takes family time away from teachers that already spend countless hours at home preparing their lessons. Because of the way the related art schedule fell, I was not seeing over 100% of my students in person when we did 50%. It may seem ridiculous to even have to say this, but a standard protocol needs to be set countywide and stick to it. Standards should also be set for students. For example, show up to the Google Meets on time if you're attending. After 15 minutes of being tardy, you will receive a tardy. You may not enter the meeting after 15 minutes of being late. If you don't check in by a certain time, you're counted as absent. It's all things that we already ask our students to do in person. It's nothing new. Make students and parents accountable for attendance and tardies. Teachers are genuinely concerned about their students in the current situation. We agree with parents that every child should be afforded a proper and fully funded education. We've been screaming that for years. It might just not be as teachers have realized on demand like Netflix or Hulu. If you're coming to complain about a situation, my parents always told me to come with suggestions also. My suggestions for our association: when you reconvene to vote on our attendance plan protocol on November the 23rd, as recommended by several in the last board meeting, please consider staying virtual until January the 4th. That only adds 13 days to your current plan, and it gives everyone a chance to recoup, regroup, and reassess. We've tried the 2-week plans, it didn't work. I'm not sure 3 weeks is going to work. This will give us all a chance to see if the cases are community spread or starting to spread within the school, hoping our quarantine and COVID cases numbers decrease. Students and teachers will have a consistent plan for an extended period of time without quarantine interruptions and changes in schedules. Make a firm plan, set a bar with the school system's cases, quarantines, and stick to it. So these are the numbers. Move to Plan A. If this happens, move to Plan B. When you start adding exceptions, it muddies the waters and causes confusion. Set your own bar if you have no guidance from the health communities. This 2 week by 2 week scenario is just impossible for everyone and increases the risk of children being left behind and falling through the cracks, educationally speaking. We would like to see a current school system dashboard weekly. Within our school system, the cases there. Place it on the WC website where it's easily accessible and not hidden under all these links. We need to be showing the positive cases and the quarantines for each school and maybe even grade level. If you have put a firm plan in place, parents and teachers can view the dashboard and know what to prepare for in advance, not the day off. We need to be transparent and let WCDE alert us of our numbers rather than the media. Thank you for your time. We appreciate all you do for our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Masters, you had something before we adjourn?
Yes, and I want to go back to the facilities if I could, under the attachments. I had asked Barnes Exterminating, a lot of the restaurants in the area is using this SaniSafe. I'd like for us to take consideration on maybe implementing this in our schools. This price, there's two different prices. One is based upon, I think, a one treatment, the other one's a 90-day treatment. And it is based upon 1,500,000 square foot of schools. And it is something I'd like to see if we can maybe possibly do with grant money. And also, before we return back to school after Thanksgiving.
Why didn't we talk about this in facilities?
I think it got missed.
Are you putting that in the form of a motion?
I can, but I think I'd like for the board to review it first before there's a motion made.
I'd like to put it in the next month's or next whenever
Workshop.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that fixed.
Okay.
Mr. Flannery can check into it and see what.
Only problem with that, if we return back to school after the 30th, they won't have time to implement this.
How about the 19th?
Well, they can go in over the Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
Well, this virus ain't going nowhere, so. And this ain't gonna be a one-time deal, I would assume.
Well, there's two different scenarios, the way I looked at it and read it.
How long is it? Well, let's talk about it.
Oh, yeah, I just want to bring that up.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions on it.
Now, I can go in there and spray the whole school with Clorox, and that's probably the same thing as that,
Could be.
you know?
Could be. I'm not a scientist. I'm just looking for different ways to get us back in
bleach
school.
kill everything.
We had one more agenda item that we added and we didn't talk about, Boones Creek surplus.
Yes.
Mr. Flainer, did you have that?
Actually, I knew that Mr. Masters was going to add that to the agenda. He brought it up after the facilities meeting. We didn't get to mention it, so that's the reason I just added to it. But I think we'd like to make the equipment and facility pieces at Boones Creek Middle School, the old one, declare those items surplus. Is that correct, what we talked about, Dr. Flannery?
I believe I will.
And that gives him the authority to get rid of it. Is that right?
Yes, it's declared or say it's equipment, it's kitchen equipment, tables, chairs, desks, just say the.
File cabinet, I mean, not much.
I think it's a good idea, and we've talked about, the stuff there. But I do think procedurally, Mr. Hale or Dr. Flannery needs to bring you a list of, and it's not every piece, but a list that summarizes what's there. And then the board would vote on it. Then Brad can, we can get rid of it on gov deals or whatever, wherever you want to get rid of it. But you gotta declare the surplus property. He's gotta take it off the depreciation schedule.
That's what actually, I remember now when we talked about it at the board retreat, that's what, Mr. Bennett said. I forgot about that. That we need a inventory before you could declare it surplus. I forgot about that. You remember that, Dr. Planner?
I don't argue with it, I don't know if I remember, but I don't argue with it.
Okay, so,
Never mind. I'll rescind my,
your thought?
yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else? And our next meeting is, Jennifer, the
The retreat's November 19th.
November 19th,
I think it was 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
It's here.
It's
Yes,
for
and that's Miss Grissom,
strategic planning and
yeah. So, November 19th at 5 o'clock. Good deal? Meeting adjourned.
Great job.
Round table.
I know we'll get it off the agenda.
Well,